Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Open. It is Tuesday, January 14th, 8:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And folks, we got PPI data. And that PPI data is pretty damn good. And because of that, if you are just waking up, just taking a look at your portfolio, you are probably seeing a color that is the opposite of what you've been seeing over the really past week, to be honest, which is green. Bitcoin, 96,000. NVIDIA, up 2%. Tessie, which we have a lot to talk about because so much happened yesterday after hours on Tesla, and we'll get into all of that along with what's happening in the pre-market. But Tesla at $414, guys, this stock was $380 yesterday at around 9:45 a.m. So, I mean, this is pretty incredible. Tesla right here up 2.7% in the pre-market. SoFi was at $13.49. It's at $14.30, up 1.64%. Robinhood at $40.63 got to $37 last night, and also had a pretty bad headline after hours that it's kind of shrugging off right now. We'll talk about that. Still, that's green. MicroStrategy up 3%. Lyft is up 1%. Again, NVIDIA is up about 2%. Mercado Libre is up. Grab is up 1.55% because the dollar slightly came down. Nubank is up 1.26%. SMCI is up 2%. The S&P 500 is up 0.5%. PayPal, GameStop, Verizon, Transmedics, Shopify, pretty much everything is green. And if it's not green, it's only slightly red. And that's because of the PPI data that we just got. So we're going to go through the PPI data, discuss the implications of it. It's really funny because yesterday, if you were on the market close at 350, I start the close at 345. At 350, pretty much everything went green. And it was weird. It's like the algos flipped a switch and everything went green. Tesla uniquely went green, and we'll talk about that. But for those 10 minutes going into the close and then after hours, we continued the run. No one could really explain it, and we tried to find some reasons, and the only reason I came up with was that I guess PPI had to have leaked. And it seems like the case. It seems like the market always knows, and by the end of the day yesterday, the market knew, and we can actually see it in the call data. The S&P 500 $5,900 call got $30 million worth of premium 1 month out yesterday from 3:50 to 4 p.m. So in those last 10 minutes, traders piled into the 5,900 call option on the S&P 500. And that probably happens when everyone has confidence that it's going to go up for a reason. And maybe the reason they have that confidence is because PPI was leaked. So there you go. A lot of stuff to talk about. We'll get into that. We'll get into Tesla. We got a lot of stuff going on there. Got a lot of other headlines this morning, and we will begin on the market open. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Gene, what's up? ER, GE, Ray, good morning. Good morning. Sanjay, Ty, Justin. Oh, we have what's his name? Gensler on CNBC. We'll watch that in a second as well, because I'm sure that will be interesting to see. I'm Beneficial. What's up? Andy, Scott, Mariposa, For Real, Broccoli, Bob. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Martin, Niels, Tobor, Noland. Thank you, everybody, for being here on the market open. Did you see the leak? I did not see the leak. I am not that elite in Wall Street yet to have the connections that can get me the leak. But plenty of people do. And all these banks, Barclays, Bank of America, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, they all have their sources. And I'm not just saying this out of my ass because I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but there's a documentary actually on YouTube that investigated what happened to Steve Cohen's hedge fund. And they found out that his hedge fund was part of these expert networks. Expert networks actually have people inside of companies that give them information. They pay them a lot of money, and they, take secret phone calls. And based on that information, it then creates the ability for these hedge funds to then sell information to for expert networks to sell information to these hedge funds. And then those hedge funds trade on that data. One of the best examples was Goldman Sachs. Before Warren Buffett invested in Goldman Sachs, people knew, and that's why Goldman Sachs went up really quick before the actual investment was announced. So the point is, everyone always knows, especially when it's that elite in Wall Street, and it feels like people ended up knowing this time around when it comes to PPI. And as a result, markets responded to it. So here is the PPI data. Let's take a look at this. Year over year growth on PPI, 3.3 versus 3.5%. Previous was 3%. So again, the market expected 3.5. We got 3.3. Core PPI was 3.5 versus 3.8 expected. Previous was 3.4. So notice we did go up. We went up from 3 to 3.3, 3.4 to 3.5, but it's lower than expectations, meaning inflation is going up, but it's not going up as much as the market expected, which is basically why we're pumping right now. Month over month, the market expected 0.4. We had 0.2. And then core on the monthly, the market expected 0.3. This is the actual reason I think we're pumping. And we had a 0.0% gain on core PPI. Core PPI is the one that really matters out of everything else. So, I mean, there is an argument. There is a really, really good argument that the reason we pumped last night was because someone knew, aka Wall Street, and they started buying the crap out of whatever dip there was at 350 because they realized, wait a second, if we're not increasing on core PPI, that means CPI, which I'll be live early tomorrow, given it comes out at 8:30. That one's probably going to be better than a lot of the expectations. And if CPI is better, given core PPI was better, I mean, what if we don't increase by 2.9% tomorrow? Or what if we do, but what if core CPI is lower than expected? If that's the case, dude, this inflation narrative that the market's been running with for the past couple of weeks, which is why the 10-year has spiked so much, maybe it's not going to be as prevalent. Now, granted, the bond market, there's still being some vigilantes, and they do not think that this is strong enough to buy a bond. So as you can see, the 10-year barely down, right? 10-year is not really moving too much. I think the 10-year, if it sees a decrease in CPI or a meaningful stabilization of CPI, then there's going to be a possibility for the 10-year to start coming down tomorrow. PPI is important. CPI is really important. And so I think tomorrow is the Super Bowl when it comes to that 10-year going down. The dollar is slightly down, 33 bips. Again, this thing needs to be down a lot more than where it is right now, but it is down, which is nice. And that is helping some of the international stocks that we're seeing right now. Someone says, yep, I've seen the documentary. Yeah, I highly recommend people watch the, I think it's on PBS on YouTube, the Steve Cohen .72 documentary. You just type in those words, it'll pop up. And they really do a good job of explaining, like in layman's terms, how Wall Street gets information before everybody else. And it makes sense. Wall Street's managing hundreds of billions of dollars. Like, of course, there's going to be monetary incentives for them to get the information before other people. Is it illegal? The documentary actually does a good job by saying it is kind of illegal, kind of not illegal based on different loopholes. Like, you're allowed to get certain types of information as a hedge fund, as a money manager. It just can't cross a line. So then the question becomes, how blurred is the line? And if the line is blurred enough, you can't get prosecuted for it. And as a result, you can trade on that data. And it seems all but inevitable. The data around PPI leaked yesterday at 350. And that's why it ended up going up right into the close. Not bad. Not bad for PPI. Is this a good sign for CPI tomorrow? I think so. I think if the market was bearish CPI, they would not be excited about the PPI data today. So it seems like they are still saying, all right, if PPI is good, then CPI should also be good as well. Okay, let's talk Tesla. Let's do a little segment on Tesla, and then we will get to the guy, Gary Gensler, and see what he was saying. This morning. He is going to be leaving. He officially is resigning. So we'll see the final thing he says in terms of his resignation and sort of how he conceptualizes his legacy as well as an SEC commissioner who really wasn't as friendly to the digital assets industry. So we'll see what he has to say about that. Okay, Tesla. So yesterday was really interesting for Tesla. First of all, for those that don't know, I did buy 10 shares of Tesla and just said, screw it at 391. And I bought those 10 shares. So I am in the stock. I do have puts at 375. So if the stock does collapse after earnings, I will be assigned those shares. But Tesla started the day at 380, got to 391. That's when I bought 10 shares. And really, I bought 10 shares because I felt like I was buying it probably high because the stock, Tesla's volatile. It could come below 391. But realistically, the experience I had in FSD to me just made me such a believer that at some point you got to stop trying to time everything and just DCA, right? And so that is the purpose of why I bought it yesterday after the 40-minute zero intervention ride I had on FSD. I did not expect for them to pump to 403 into the close, much less get to 416 after hours, and currently right now at 414. So what happened? Three things that happened. First thing, very simple, PPI. We just talked about it for 10 minutes, right? PPI was probably leaked. The market said, all right, Tesla's oversold, PPI's leaked, inflation's good. That means markets should go up and 10-year should come down. Therefore, we're going to buy Tesla. That was one of the reasons. Another reason, which is a little bit more macroeconomic, but I do think it has implications on Tesla, is this report from Bloomberg Intelligence. There were two reports from Bloomberg yesterday. This one was the macro one. The second one is going to be the one that, if you haven't heard the headline yet, it's a crazy headline. But this report came out from Bloomberg on at around 6 p.m. And it said the Trump team is studying a gradual tariff hike under emergency powers. Trump's economic team is discussing a gradual approach to tariffs, increasing by 2 to 5% per month to boost negotiating leverage and avoid the inflation spike. AKA, if Trump accepts this proposal, he's not going to like slap tariffs on day one because his team is thinking that it's going to be inflationary. This is from what Bloomberg is saying. And so they're going to be very gradual with how they increase tariffs by 2 to 5% a month. Now, the proposal has not been proposed to Trump. According to Bloomberg, it's in its earliest stages, and advisors like Scott Bessent have worked on it, but they haven't actually showed it to Trump. Trump might hate this. Trump might love this. We don't know, but eventually we're going to find out. The uncertainty surrounding Trump's tariff plans is causing market volatility, with investors guessing around the impact of the economy and the Federal Reserve's growth outlook. This headline theoretically is bullish for the entire market, because what's the one thing the market is so uncertain on right now? Inflation. And if tariffs actually are inflationary, which I still think, there's going to be a lot of data we have to see how that plays out, then it looks like Trump's team of advisors are saying, hey, let's gradually do it, because inflation will naturally come down and we'll gradually do this. And so we'll be able to try to balance the two, versus just like slap it on day one. Because if we do get an inflation spike that is aggressive, I'm pretty sure his team is probably like, Trump can't, just pressure Jay Powell to lower the rates if inflation legitimately is spiking, because Jay Powell is just not going to, lower rates at that point. Like he's going to need to see progress, especially after 2 years of fighting this fire. So from that perspective, I do think that could have been bullish to the broader market. And that's why we saw a lot of stocks pump after hours, based on the idea that tariffs are not going to be implemented at such a grand scale. Core PPI at 0.0% is very important, 100,000%. And as Chris was saying on the show yesterday, if we end up getting any level of fears of deflation, which is, good in the context of at least the harsh inflation that we're fighting right now, that could also be a massive tailwind for the market. Having said that, PPI and Trump tariffs are two macro reasons why Tesla pumped. This is a substantive reason Tesla could have pumped. Now, there's a lot of nuance to this, so let's get to it. But this headline, I think, surprised everyone last night. According to Bloomberg, Chinese officials are evaluating a potential option that involves Elon Musk acquiring the U.S. operations of TikTok if the company fails to fend off a controversial ban on the short video app, according to people familiar with the matter. Now, look, is this the real headline for why Tesla pumped? I think it's yes and no. So I think Tesla pumped on a lot of macro news, but Tesla uniquely pumped. Like a lot of stocks were up, but they weren't up as much as Tesla. So I think one of the reasons that could have added fuel to why Tesla pumped is because of a potential world in which Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, buys one of the most powerful social media video platforms in the world, aka TikTok. Now, why does this kind of make sense? Well, Trump wants TikTok to stay. Elon and Trump are best friends. Maybe Trump called him up and said, hey, can you just buy this thing? Elon has the money to do it. I know people are saying he would have to sell Tesla. I don't think that's true. He could sell SpaceX. He could sell stock in any of the other companies he owns. Also, he could raise an equity round of financing. I think he would raise the money in 2 seconds if he said, hey, we're buying TikTok. It's going to cost us like $70 billion. It's going to be incorporated into X, because TikTok makes a lot of money. I think they make like $8 billion of revenue a year just in the United States, versus X, which barely makes like $3 billion. And I think he would find the money really quick. So I don't think he would have to sell Tesla, and I don't think it would be necessarily bearish for that. To do it in that way. Elon incorporating TikTok into X makes X a $200 billion company overnight. Probably even more, in my opinion. That's 170 million users now that Elon has access to. And then potentially Elon allows free speech and no censorship on one of the world's largest video platforms, which is conducive with what he wants to do in terms of how he thinks about democracy, freedom, all that stuff. So look, I don't think this is going to happen because, for 2 reasons. Number one, it's just so wild that I can't imagine Elon buying TikTok. Like, I can't imagine that happening. But then again, Bloomberg has their sources and they're saying this is true. So I guess we got to, weigh the pros and cons of it. The other reason it's probably not happening is because TikTok came out last night and they talked to Vanity Fair. It's one of those magazines. And they said, yeah, this is not happening, right? Or they basically said, we're not going to respond to things that are fiction. Now, I always want to take these things with a grain of salt, because maybe TikTok is telling the truth. And of course, like, there's no reason for them to respond to this because it's not even real. However, let's not kid ourselves. January 19th, TikTok's getting banned. It's done. Like, the Supreme Court is not granting them the extension. That's the whole reason this report came out, because the Supreme Court officials have made it very clear, just based on the oral readings, that they're not going to allow TikTok to stay, which means then TikTok has to either sell itself, like literally in the next 5 days, or be banned. Like, IP addresses are shut off, and TikTok you're not going to be able to open it on your phone in the United States of America. I think TikTok needs a lot of leveraging, a lot of negotiating, a lot of bargaining power. And if they're trying to do a last minute sale, how many people in the world actually have the capital or the ability to raise capital to buy something that I believe is estimated in the US part of its business to be worth 50 to 70 billion? There's not that many people. Jeff Bezos, Zucks, Elon, Sundar, Satya, but a lot of those companies, there's no way the government would let them buy it. Elon maybe is the only one that could actually potentially do it. So per Variety, TikTok said that they're denying this. One argument could be that TikTok's denying it simply for the fact that they want better negotiations. If they don't sell it to Elon and they don't sell it to anyone else, then they're done in the next 5 days. So I think this is going to have a ton of crazy implications over the next few days in terms of us figuring it out. If I had to do, gun to my head, do I say Elon buys TikTok? No. I would say I can't see it happening. But Elon hasn't commented on this. He hasn't tweeted. He hasn't responded to anyone. And like everyone was talking about it last night. Everyone. He hasn't said a single word. Usually Elon says this is stupid, fake news, yada, yada, right? Elon clowns the legacy media for running with these headlines that they use to get clicks. Not a single word from Elon. Not a single peep. And so it begs the question, all right, is there actually some negotiation happening? And he's just like staying quiet right now. And TikTok's denying it to keep the negotiations on. Or is it legitimate a fake story? I think we're going to see. We're going to see in terms of how this ends up playing out. But that could have also been a reason why TikTok or why Tesla pumped a little bit. Because, and people are saying, well, why would Tesla pump on this? Well, to me, Elon just gets more power. I mean, think of all the magnification of Tesla on Twitter just based on the algorithms of being able to push that content. Now you have TikTok, 170 million people. I mean, think about selling Teslas on TikTok just by nature of having control of the algorithm. There's a lot of different ways I think this could be powerful for him. But we're going to have to see if it actually ends up playing out. Amit, did you see people like Taylor Lorenz moving to Red Note? Yeah, so this is a side story, but it has implications from TikTok and definitely has implications on Meta. This is very weird, guys. So apparently TikTok's getting banned, which we all pretty much know is going to happen. There's a new Chinese social media app that's #1 in the United States of America called Red Note. That's what it's called, Red Note. And people are signing up to it like crazy, particularly some more liberal social media influencers. And it's kind of weird because it's like, why is there another Chinese social media app that's gaining popularity? Kind of just looks like an Instagram version or a Chinese version of Instagram. This is what it looks like right here. As you can see, you got photos, trending, messages, and then a bunch of Chinese stuff. And it's so weird how this thing is #1. And if TikTok gets banned, is this just another app that's going to be part of the CCP that gets people's attention? And then is the United States going to have to ban this thing? Like I am just flabbergasted and so confused how this thing is getting #1 and why people are signing up to it. And apparently, if TikTok gets banned, it looks like China is trying to start something new. I don't think this is part of ByteDance, but it is part of something else. It's pretty common in Malaysia. Okay, so it seems like internationally they've been able to expand and now they're coming to the United States. It's weird. It's really, really, really weird. So, if that ends up becoming a real thing, I guess the United States has to deal with the national security threats potentially of something like Redbook or Red Note. The question is, will it become as big as TikTok? And, that's really hard to do. But if it does, we're going to have to deal with this whole debacle again. But people are signing up to it. And literally, look at the app. The app is like, there's Chinese written on the app. Like it's not even like translated for the United States. It's a Chinese app in the United States and people are signing up to it. I don't know why. I haven't downloaded the app, but apparently there's some value that people are getting from it. So I guess we're going to see. We're going to see what happens. Look, I don't think Elon's buying TikTok. I do think that headline from Bloomberg last night really had a lot of implications of getting people to think what would happen if they were to buy TikTok. But if they don't buy TikTok and TikTok doesn't sell itself, then in 5 days, TikTok's gone. And Meta and Google should be the major beneficiaries of that happening. All right, let's get Gary Gensler on. He was on CNBC just about 30 minutes ago. Here's what he had to say. This is probably going to be his final interview as chair of the SEC. And then we will have a new administration in the next week. Here we go.
Lines with just 4 days left before President-elect Donald Trump taking office. The current SEC chair, Gary Gensler, stepping down. Yesterday, 2 Robinhood broker-dealers agreed to pay $45 million to settle SEC charges that they violated more than 10 security law provisions related to brokerage operations. We're going to talk about that and so much more. Joining us right now is SEC Chair Gary Gensler in his exit interview. Gary, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for talking with us throughout your time in office. There's about 100 questions that I have on my list, but I want to start with one that I think actually may be, in a way, the hardest. And I think it's a political question, but it's also a philosophical question, which is when you look back at the work that you did over the last 4 years, and you also look at this election, specifically this election, and you look at the number of folks in the crypto world who ultimately turned out, not just turned out for President-elect Trump, but turned out for President-elect Trump with money, with dollars, the huge amount of money that went into effectively his campaign as, to some degree, a rebuke of what was happening with your efforts to block some of the things that they were doing. I'm so curious how you personally think about that today.
First, Andrew, Joe, Becky, so good to be with you, and thank you for inviting me. Look, I think I believe deeply in our great democracy. I think that this election, though, as you point out, there was money raised from the crypto field. I don't think that's what this election was about. This field, the crypto field, a highly speculative field, has not been compliant with various laws, whether it's anti-money laundering laws, sanctions laws, or in our case, securities laws. Now, Bitcoin's not a security, but these 10 or 15,000 other tokens, the investing public has been hurt over the many years. My predecessor, Jay Clayton, who's going to serve again in the Trump administration, but Jay Clayton had brought about 80 cases. We're a law enforcement agency. That's what we've continued to do to protect the investing public so they get disclosure, to protect against fraud, manipulation, and there's just been too much of that in this field. Right. And then, of course, to address conflicts when you had these crypto exchanges not only operating as exchanges, but also trading against their customers and on and on.
Gary, I think the question, though, is, some critics have said that the SEC has pursued a policy that has been focused more on litigation, if you will, or rules by way of litigation than actual law. That perhaps there should have been a greater effort put on creating real laws, not just guidelines, which then created this litigation. I'm looking, by the way, at even what just took place in the last, 48 hours from this court as it relates to the Coinbase case, where they're asking the SEC now, effectively you, to, quote, explain yourself as it relates to some of the things that are being done. And by the way, the judge in the case said to the SEC, quote, it should not give yet another poor explanation in an already long line of them. And so I know it's a hard question, but I put it to you because I think that the public is trying to understand the way you've thought about it thus far.
Look, I thought about it that we have laws. Congress has passed those laws. Of course, they can change them. But a sector of this field, crypto, the investing public is investing based on projects and these things without prejudging any one of them. Many of them are under the securities laws. And in that field, there's a lot of non-compliance. Look, Andrew, in most of what you talk about on any given day, you talk about the fundamentals of a stock or a bond or the markets, the valuations of mixed fundamentals and momentum or sentiment. And this crypto field seems to trade mostly on sentiment and much less on fundamentals. But if the fundamentals are there, and I say if, then make the proper disclosures under the securities laws.
I have no idea what that answer is. I don't think that's really an answer. This is really Gensler doing what he's done for the past 4 years, which is when he's asked to actually take accountability on his digital assets crypto legislation, he kind of just runs away and doesn't say anything. And everyone's left wondering, well, how do we engage in a crypto economy? And it's really because Gensler doesn't believe that there should be a crypto economy.
That's the basic bargain.
I was glad to have you coming on today, Chair Gensler. And I was thinking of just an overriding question about Bitcoin and what we've seen for the past 4 years under your tenure. And I can only come up really with with two scenarios, and neither one of them are great. The first one is that under your leadership, it was, really dragged kicking and screaming into where we are today, and it's a far cry from 4 years ago. You'd have to admit it, with ETFs and adoption by so many different firms. It's almost like there were so many obstacles put up for it. It made it very hard for what could be a transformative new asset or industry. So that's on the one hand that you did. Or on the other hand, it should have been very closely scrutinized. And at $95,000, if this is ephemeral and built on air and a beanie baby, there's going to be an absolute bloodbath. So either you stood in the way of a totally new industry, or you were unable to prevent a huge bubble from forming, which is going to end very badly. And neither one is going to be much of a legacy to look back on.
Joe, I know from our conversations in the past, you view Bitcoin very differently than these 10 or 15,000 other tokens.
But it was hard for Bitcoin under you, though, under your regime. It was very difficult for anything good to happen for Bitcoin.
Joe, within the first few months in the job, we had Bitcoin exchange traded funds based on futures.
But also,
you
Okay, so this is a really interesting nuanced point here. Basically, Joe is putting him in what debaters would call a double bind. He's like, either Bitcoin's the biggest bubble in the world and you have failed as commissioner of the SEC to actually stop that bubble from forming, and now you have a $2 trillion bubble, or it's not the biggest bubble in the world, which is the second part of the double bind, and it's an amazing new industry that could create so much prosperity, and you've made it hell for people to engage in that industry. And so basically he's saying your legacy is screwed either way. If it's the biggest bubble, you allowed it to form. If it's not the biggest bubble and it's a legit industry, you made it really hard for it to be possible. Why, should anyone respect you in terms of your legacy as the SEC chair? And this is going to be, I guess, how Gensler is viewed over the next decade.
You recall when I was coming into this role, the whole GameStop events. And that market is so much more critical to you and the American public than crypto, the $60 trillion equity markets. And we have put in fundamental reforms, not only shortening the settlement cycle where you can get your money in 1 day rather than 2 days if you're an everyday investor, but that actually the markets will be more efficient. We addressed ourselves to the second most important market, I would say, the U.S. Treasury market that had had jitters for so long, a $28 trillion market, and fundamental important reforms. We addressed ourselves to corporate governance, that an insider no longer can file a plan on a Monday the same time they have insider information and sell their stock on a Tuesday. They'll now have to wait 3 months. So I'm very proud of the record and this focus that you all have had on crypto. I understand it brings in eyeballs, it sells newspapers and so forth, but the capital markets at $120 trillion, I'm very proud of our record.
Gary, let me go to a different topic. We're going to move way off of crypto, but another topic that has frankly become quite controversial, which is both climate rules, which are now in litigation that you put forward, and then there were efforts early on that I think effectively either were abandoned or you tell me around ESG rules. Boosting board diversity, for example. There were some workforce management issues and other things. And the whole country or world seems to have shifted in some way. You may not agree with the way it has shifted, but I, again, wonder how you think about this election, what you think's happened even in this country. Almost every single day, there is another Fortune 500 company coming out with announcements that they're abandoning DEI programs. They're abandoning ESG programs. They're abandoning a lot of the things that were being talked about by this administration and by the SEC as it related to rules and other things that they were trying to put forward.
Andrew, as a securities regulator, I'm neutral to just about all that you just said. We're not a climate regulator and we're not a workforce regulator. We're a securities regulator. But when I came into the role, we had found that of the top 1,000 companies listed on the exchanges, a majority were making disclosures about their climate risks And investors were telling us that they found those disclosures inconsistent but material to their investment decisions. So we grounded in materiality. We went out, we heard the public, we got tens of thousands of comments, lots of investors who wanted this information to be more consistent and just based on material information. And I've been consistent since my confirmation that we would ground it in just what's material to investors. As you might recall, the back and forth.
Right.
Yes, some advocates wanted more, but we're just a securities regulator, and I believe that we rightly just try to bring
Gary,
consistency.
Even if we could stipulate that it was for disclosure purposes, I'm curious, just on a very personal level, what now that you're taking off and leaving the role, what you make of this reversal as it relates to ESG and DEI and so many of these other things that had become almost a staple of corporate America over the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years that was developing.
Well, I know in just managing the SEC's 5,000 people, we benefit from recruiting and giving opportunities to the diverse population we have in America, 330 million people, regardless of gender, race, or background, or orientation. That helps our agency. But in terms of a securities regulator, really investors have to decide what's relevant. We did not put forward, we at the SEC under my leadership didn't put forward any disclosure rules around workforce or diversity. We did come in and do something around climate because the markets were already having those disclosures. What I do think is the markets will figure out, the investors will figure out whether the climate disclosure is relevant and material to their investment decisions.
But is it material? It was material a couple of years ago and it's not now. I don't understand the materiality of it. And whether some investors decide that or whether it's just very gray.
I think, Becky, you're right that things can change. 20 and 30 years ago, companies did not make disclosures about cyber risk. They didn't make disclosures around climate risk. I came into the role and found many, many investors wanted and demanded that type of disclosure. And so we took those two projects up. What might be the case 5 or 15 years from now could shift as well. And I think our great agency is just about bringing some consistency and truthfulness, that people don't lie. Think about artificial intelligence right now. Many companies are sort of puffing themselves up and promoting that. It's important that they not, let's say, call it AI wash, that they're truthful in what they say.
Gary, earlier, just to return, just so I understand completely what you think is going to happen, or whether your thinking has evolved. It almost sounded like you wanted to separate Bitcoin from the rest of the industry, and I'm wondering whether you're actually warming to the idea of at least Bitcoin, and whether again people are tweeting you that I said you either stood in the way of an extraordinary industry or were utterly unable to prevent a massive bubble. What do you think the future holds? Do you have a feeling on which it is? Do you think Bitcoin has inherent value and is a store of value? Or do you feel that when we look back on it 10, 15, 20 years from now, it's going to be something from the 18th century with tulips? Or whenever.
Joe, it's hard to predict. I think I really do like you, because I know that you think I'm going to out you think negatively on many of these altcoins, you, Joe. But in terms of Bitcoin, we at the SEC have never said it's a security.
Well,
I have not.
What do you think? You taught at MIT. I think you know. I think you got to have some kind of feeling. You've read the books, Bitcoin Standard.
Yeah. I think that Bitcoin is a highly speculative, volatile asset. But with 7 billion people around the globe, 7 billion people want to trade it, just like we do have gold for 10,000 years. We have Bitcoin. It might be something else in the future as well. Right. These other thousands of projects, need to show their use case and show that they actually have fundamentals underlying them, or they won't persist, Joe.
Oh my God,
and
you own
that's
Bitcoin.
where the public. That's
You must
that's
own
why
Bitcoin.
the
You
public
must
needs
own it
disclosure.
now. That's what it's.
I don't.
You love
I've
it.
never owned.
You love.
I've never.
You love it. You
I've
don't
never,
like those other coins.
I've never owned any of
No, I know.
these, and I've been consistent
Okay.
for 7 or 8 years on this.
Well, now you can because you won't be a SEC chair anymore.
Hey, Gary, different lane. One of the other new features of the market or a market is this idea of prediction markets.
All right, let's move on from that. We'll probably go back to that later after the bell. Look, I thought this was really interesting. In general, I got to give some props to Joe, dude. That's a hell of a question. I mean, those are questions you ask in a competitive debate round, right? Where, to the point where your opponent, either way they answer, they're kind of screwed in terms of their answer. And I've never thought of it like that. Either Bitcoin and crypto is the biggest bubble in the world, and Gensler, who has a obligation to protect everyone from, bubbles, couldn't do anything about it because now Fartcoin today is up 42%, right? This is the stuff Gensler was supposed to stop. Or it's a thriving industry. People should be able to trade Fartcoin if they want. They should be able to trade Bitcoin if they want. And Gensler made it very, very, very difficult for average people in the industry to engage with cryptocurrencies because the companies that were setting the policies and trying to help with regulations, Robinhood, Coinbase, et cetera, they had a really, really tough time working with Gensler's SEC. So overall, we're in a new era for crypto, a new era for the broader equity markets, a new era for the SEC. And yesterday, we got another headline that definitively proves that we are in a new era for crypto. The Washington Post, this came out around 3:30 p.m., 30 minutes before the close, and it helped Bitcoin pump up to 94,000 yesterday. They're reporting that on day one, Trump is going to unleash the gauntlet of different crypto executive orders. So this is what they wrote. David Sachs, and members of the Trump transition team have been working closely with crypto leaders to finalize a legislative strategy, and Trump is expected to issue executive orders on the first day of his presidency that may address issues including debanking and the repeal of controversial crypto accounting policy requiring banks holding digital assets to count them as liabilities on the bank's own balance sheet, according to the person involved with the conversations. The source added that the Trump team has made it very clear that this is a priority. That's why I think Bitcoin's up right now. I mean, Bitcoin's up because of PPI. Bitcoin's up because potentially the tariffs are not going to be as strong as what the market thought. So there's going to be a little bit more liquidity. But in general, Robinhood right here, 40.95. I think Bitcoin's up because of this Washington Post article that seems to be implying what all of us pretty much thought was going to happen, but we never had real confirmation. And we're going to find out in the next 5 days. But all of us think that on day one, Trump's going to do a ton of executive orders. And I think in particular, the two areas he's going to tie those executive orders to are deregulation. So certain bureaucratic lines of red tape that the Biden administration has put up, either on oil and gas, semiconductors, all those industries, probably to some extent get removed day one. And then crypto, right? Trump ran on crypto. You could argue crypto was one of the reasons he got elected. And as a result, he probably wants to fulfill on those promises. And if he can do that on day one, I think a lot of people are going to be a lot happy. And that's going to be very, very good for the overall administration to get ready to go. So if we do get a ton of new executive orders, I mean, it is an argument that the new year is going to start off potentially with a lot more momentum. We've seen a lot of red over the past couple of days. This is one of the first days we're seeing some green, and we're seeing this dip being eaten up. And so now it's going to be a question of if we can hold it. But if we have executive orders to help support this, that also could be generally bullish going into 2025. This headline came out this morning as well. Italy's largest bank bought $1 million worth of Bitcoin. $1 million is not a ton of money, but nonetheless, the fact that banks across the world are starting to get more excited, or I guess more normalized to the asset class, even by just buying them, even if it was $1. The fact is that if they're putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet, there is a potential for them to put a lot more Bitcoin in the future, which obviously is really good for Bitcoin continuing to catch a bid. Let's look at the ETF inflows yesterday. For the past couple of days, they've been pretty negative. It looks like yesterday was still negative. So BlackRock bought $29.5 million of Bitcoin, but in general, the industry, in terms of the ETF, sold off $280 million from the ETFs. Today, we might see a difference as Bitcoin is up at 96,000. But look, I can't see how this is not bullish for crypto. It looked really bad yesterday, hitting 89,000. But again, that felt like it felt like a wick as soon as it happened. It didn't feel like there had real momentum to stay at that 89,000 range. And for it to go back down to 70,000, as Tom Lee was talking about on CNBC yesterday, I mean, you would need to see some really bad sentiment shift, not only on crypto, but on the entire macro. And, maybe that happens, maybe that doesn't. But as of now, it looks like it is ready to go forward. I mean, you could have literally bought it at 89.189 yesterday, and now you're at 96. We hit 97 a couple hours ago, which is, I mean, it's just incredible given where we were yesterday. Palantir above 67. Yeah, so we do have Palantir earnings that is coming out. I will have many videos and probably tweets in the future of my expectations on Palantir earnings, but we got an official date yesterday, February 3rd. This is going to be, in my opinion, the most important earnings for Palantir ever, even though every single earnings is the most important. But still, we have never pumped the way we have pumped before in earnings outside of Q4 2024 earnings, which is going to be coming up on February 3rd after hours. We have never gone up as much as we did. I think the pump, basically, from 47 to 85, and realistically from 40 because we fell before Q3 earnings. So basically we doubled, right? Now I know we're not at 85 anymore, but we showed a lot of strength in terms of the stock. It was the best performing stock in the S&P 500 last year. Now I think the market's like, okay, you got the love, you got the excitement, the media wants you, you're in the S&P, you're in the NASDAQ. Can you show us the numbers? And I think that's going to be the biggest thing. And, I think I've been pretty consistent on the message, which is that, look, if the numbers aren't amazing, we take a haircut, and that's okay as long as there's not anything in terms of the thesis that is breaking. If the numbers are pretty good, even if they're not amazing, so amazing would be like, 40% growth, maybe we get 32, 34% growth. That's still pretty good, in my opinion. And if the stock takes a correction off that, it is what it is, right? The stock has been extended. We know that trading at these multiples are pretty high. Now, if they end up showing some really crazy growth, they guide for 40% growth, 35% growth, or who knows, above 40% growth, that's when I think this goes to a new stratosphere. I mean, if Palantir guides for 2025, 40% growth, which I wrote up a long post a couple weeks ago on Twitter of how I think they can get there. And there's a lot of elements to why I think they will eventually grow at 40%. This is going to get very exciting. It's going to get very exciting because there's not many other software AI names that can compound at the level. I mean, most of them are not even growing 30%. And I definitely think Palantir is going to grow 30% in Q4. I know people are thinking the Q3 30% is a one-time thing. I disagree. I think there's definitely going to be a 30% quarter in Q4, and then the guidance hopefully is above 30%. But if it's in that 30 to 32% range, I think that's okay. If they give us a 40% growth quarter, I think it's going to be awesome. The other thing that we have to think about when it comes to Palantir is that there's going to be that SARS expense. We've talked about it extensively over the past couple of weeks. I still think none of us fully know how much that expense is going to be because there are time-vested SARS and market-vested SARS, and these are employee stock options that were given to them if the stock was above 70. We stayed above 70 for a couple of weeks, so employees got to take advantage of that. And that could cause an EPS miss or a little bit of a decline in earnings per share, even if that's not something Palantir can control. Algorithms might sell it off. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen, and so we're going to have to see how that plays out going into February 3rd. Jefferies did say that $28 is their price target. They reiterated it yesterday after the bell. They think there's more multiple compression to go. Morgan Stanley, obviously last week, says they have a $60 price target. Dan Ives and Mariana are at 75, and then UBS is at 80. So you do have a lot of diversity in terms of opinions on what could happen to this, and it really will all depend on earnings growth going into February 3rd. Wow, Hood, holy crap, 41.74. Where did that come from? I mean, I know Bitcoin's up, but that is big. Oh, so speaking of Hood, I mean, we'll talk more about this. We got a minute until the bell, but Hood settled with the SEC to pay $45 million for inaccurate reporting of different transactions from 2019 to 2022, one-time settlement fee. It's not just Robinhood. Blackstone and KKR are also paying $100 million. So the SEC, before Gensler left, is basically charging all these firms and settling with them for all the different things that they got mad about over the past couple of years. I think it's a parking ticket. I think it's not a big deal. It's the cost of doing business. It will affect Q1 revenue. We're going to have to subtract $45 million. But for Q4, analysts are now expecting $930 million for Robinhood to put up in earnings. They were expecting $654 million 3 weeks ago. So the level of expectations have gone through the roof. I think Hood's going to live up to the expectations, but still, it's going to be a monster Q4. I think the market knows it. PPI came in better than expected. Bitcoin's up, and that's probably why you're seeing Robinhood up about 6% right here going into the market open. All right, folks, here we go. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Tuesday, January 14th, 9:30 a.m. The stock market is now open. And we open with Robinhood busting through 42 at 42.17, up 6.4%. My goodness, what an open for Hood. Tessie, 413, up 2.4%. 413 on Tesla. Was at 380 yesterday, 380 to 413 on Tessie. AMD from 114 to 118. SoFi from 1380 to 1435. That's up 2%. MicroStrategy is up about 5%, 342. MicroStrategy right here, 343.04, up 4.41%. Bitcoin, 96,873, trying to get back to 97,000. Palantir was about $63 yesterday, now at almost 67, 66.87, up 2.9% as well on Palantir. NVIDIA is up 1.59%, which is not bad. It was at 135. It was at 129 yesterday. So 129 to 135, not too bad at all. Apple at 234, basically flat. We do have a headline yesterday from Apple saying that their December quarter is not going to have a good year-over-year increase in terms of sales on the iPhone. And so if that's the case, maybe Q4 is not the best for Apple, but Apple right here is flat at 234. Google at 191, that's up about 0.26%. Rocket Lab took a nasty beating, down 10% yesterday. Now it's up 1.25%, 24.21. IWM is green, up 1%. Small caps 219. The Qs, NASDAQ up 0.5%, 508. Dow Jones 424. That's up 30 bips. Mercado Libre 1758, which is not bad. The dollar's coming down a little bit. That's up 1%. Grab is up about 0.22%. Nubank's up 0.72%. SMCI is up 3%. The S&P 500 is up about 30 bips. GameStop is up 1%. PayPal is up 1% as well. Robinhood 4140 falling just below that 4230 level. Tesla 413 still holding the 413s, even making its way up to 414. And then SoFi right here at 1426. Palantir above 67 at 6724 currently right now. Not bad. Not a bad open. Let's check on the spec names. And see how they're doing. All of spec is up except of AMC. So D-Wave, Quantum up 12%, IONQ up 3%, Rigetti not being regretty today as we get into the market open, 13%, Quantum Computing QUBT, that's up 14.6%, Kohler's up 21%, Oklow's up 4%, GameStop's up a little bit, MicroStrategy's up 5%, Faraday Futures up 6%, Archer's up 6%, SoundHound's up 8%, Big Bear's up 6%, and Fartcoin is currently up 44%. Look, my opinion is the same as yesterday. I don't like that assets like Fartcoin are mooning as much as they are. I think that's too much froth in the market, and I think they shouldn't be worth $1 billion when there's equities out there that deserve that billion more than Fartcoin. But nonetheless, if you have a friendly crypto regime that is getting started and you got Trump ready to do a ton of executive orders on crypto, the whole industry is going to benefit. XRP, all of these guys. And it looks like they're going to get some momentum. Shout out to Evan in the chat. I'm really happy you covered Fartcoin. I was worried. We have to cover it, dude. We have to cover it. There's no way we can't cover it. We've covered it since it was like 30 cents, and we've not bought it. Or I've not bought it since 30 cents, and I've just watched it 3x on me in the matter of the past 4 weeks. Tesla right here, 414. Tesla did get upgraded by Morgan Stanley yesterday to $800 on their bull case. Their actual price target is 430. Could that be some of the reason why Tesla's getting some love? Probably. I don't think that's the only reason. I think the real reason is PPI. For those that are just joining, PPI beat very nicely. 0.2% versus 0.4% expected. And then core on the monthly was 0% versus 0.3% expected. Which if PPI is any indication for CPI, which theoretically it should be because producers are paying what consumers are ultimately buying. So there is some interlinking of that. Wow, Tesla at 417. Then CPI should be good. And if CPI is good, then maybe this market continues to get some momentum. I am currently up on my 10 shares of Tessie. I am up $257. Dude, that's a lot of money, bro. $257, like, it's a lot of freaking money. Like $257 is a lot in a day to make $250. That's not small chump change, bro. So I'm happy. I'm a happy Tesla shareholder right now. $250 is nice. Now, granted, I also know how emotional this stock is, and this thing could be down as much as it's up, as much as it could be up. But still, busting through 400 is not bad. Not bad at all. S&P 500 now going even further green, 584. S&P 500 low was 575, and ironically, 575 yesterday was the intraday low. That was where we were on November 4th before Trump got elected. So basically, we went all the way back to November 4th and erased all the gains from Trump getting elected on the S&P. And so we bounced from that level. So maybe that is one of those important levels psychologically the market's looking at, because that marked the beginning of this new Trump administration, theoretically. and that potentially could be some support. 584 right here on the S&P. Tesla 416. Hood is back above 42. Are we there? Let's see. Hood is basically at 42, 41.91 right now on Robinhood. Also, Pete Hegseth, which is the nomination that Trump has for the defense secretary, he's taking questions today, I believe. So he's going to be in front of the Senate today, and they're going to be grilling him about everything. And if he gets confirmed, then he will be the new defense secretary. Grab is up about 1%. Grab's up 1%. Nubank's up almost 1%. SMCI. Let's take a look at the semis. All the semis are green. Wow. All the semis are green. That's incredible, dude. All the freaking semis are green. That is not bad. MSTR is up 5%. That is correct. MSTR is up 5% as well. 97K on Bitcoin. That's helping. Look at this. TSM, Qualcomm, Broadcom, ASML, SMCI, AMD, NVIDIA. All of them are green, up about 1 to 2%. And yesterday, most of these were red, except NVIDIA. But then NVIDIA ended up turning red towards the middle of the day as well. So not bad. Micron got upgraded yesterday. They're up. Let's check on Uber. I imagine Uber's probably up 1 or 2%. Uber is up 1.1%. SoFi 1434. Again, puts on SoFi have done very well if you've sold in that 1350 range. Meta's down. Interesting. Why do you guys think Meta's down? The only reason I can conclude is that the Bloomberg article is not fake and TikTok is thinking of being sold, maybe not to Elon, but to someone else, and TikTok's going to stay. And as a result, Meta doesn't get the tailwind of TikTok being banned, which, again, is a massive tailwind for this company because just a lot of people are going to use Instagram if they can't use TikTok. I feel like it has to be on that TikTok Elon kind of connection, even if, Elon's not actually buying TikTok. Yeah, Snapchat's down as well. So right now, investors in Snap and Meta are getting a little bit more scared that TikTok doesn't get banned or TikTok finds a way to, well, probably gets banned, but I guess they're assuming TikTok will sell itself to someone. And if it's Elon Musk, I think it would be insane. Like, I can't even imagine what the world would look like if that happened. But if it did, it would be insane if Elon controls TikTok. Tesla, oh my gosh. It's about to hit 420. Holy crap. Let me check resistance on Tesla. Dude, this is quick. Why didn't you guys tell me to buy Tesla earlier? If I would go up 10% in a day, I would have bought Tesla earlier. Goodness. This thing just goes up. I want to buy stocks that just go up. It's fun. It's nice to be up a couple $100 in a day. 420 on Tesla has nothing, dude. 52,000 shares. That's nothing. 52,000 shares is nothing. This thing can break 420 easily. If it has the momentum, if it has the volume, it's going to break 420. I did buy IONQ yesterday, or not IONQ. Sorry, no, I bought INQQ, the India Internet ETF. So I bought 100 shares of that at 1472. I finally DCA'd into India. The reason for that is the Indian rupee is hitting the lowest level against the dollar. So if the dollar goes down, the rupee will get stronger, which means this ETF theoretically all of India should do well, just based on that from a currency perspective. But I did buy that yesterday. And that one is currently up right now. Tesla 419.7. Palantir 68. Wow, this is a bit of a rally, folks. Holy crap. 68.11. Let me check the resistance on 69 for Palantir. Tesla is like 10 cents away from 420. I think it'll get there. 69 for Palantir is 25,000 shares. And there you go. Tesla 420. Tesla 420. Tesla 420, baby. Tesla 4 freaking 20. Palantir is 7 cents away from 68. Dude, what a day. What a freaking day. And if CPI is also pretty good, I mean, we're going to have some fun on Tesla and Palantir. Hood is over 42 still. AMD's at 117. SoFi 1440. Tesla really nicely trying to get over 420. I mean, it's at 421. I think we just laughed around 420 literally 10 seconds ago. This is a hell of a move. This is a pretty big move. Same thing with Hood, 42.19, 7%. That's a move. Palantir 68, up almost 5%. That is a move. Not bad. Not bad at all. SoFi, I wouldn't say SoFi's lagging. Now, SoFi's still below 15 because, SoFi is It's just trying to consolidate here. But SoFi up 2.4% to me is not lagging. It's doing good. Also, Hood has the crypto tailwind. We got to remember that. So Bitcoin going up definitely accentuates the Robinhood move. Celsius right here up 1.46%. Wow, Rigetti up 23%. Quantum making a little bit of a comeback today. D-Wave's up 15, IONQ's up 5, Rigetti's up 24, and then QUBT is up 21. So looks like some of these quantum names are getting a little bit of love right here as well. Can you check the new Hood Morgan Stanley upgrade? Morgan Stanley upgraded Hood? Really? That is interesting. That could also be a reason why they're getting some love. Robinhood is added to the financials finest list at Morgan Stanley. So they added them to some fancy list at Morgan Stanley. I don't see the upgrade yet. I don't see the exact price target upgrade. We do have Citibank that raised Hood from 25 to 45. That's nice. But I don't see the price target yet on Morgan Stanley. I'll try to find that. But it looks like they're bullish. Wow, 42.20. 42.20. Bitcoin 97,000. Tesla 420. SoFi 1444. All right, who thinks it's a bull trap? Who thinks it's a bull trap? Who thinks it's a proper reaction after PPI? I know some of you guys yesterday after the bell felt like this was too much of a bull trap. Who's thinking this is a selling opportunity versus thinking to kind of sit back and just let it play out? Jamal, thank you for the $10 super chat. Do you like Tesla? What about TSLL? I like TSLL if you are wheeling it. I don't think it's meant to hold long term because of the NAV erosion of the ETF. That's kind of sort of the way the exchange traded instrument works. But if you're wheeling it, and you're selling puts on it, selling covered calls on it based on a certain time frame, I think it is very useful. It's just very volatile because it's 2x Tesla. But I would not own TSLL as like a large part of like my core long-term holdings. I'd rather just own the underlying because you just never know with these ETFs, they can operate in very wonky ways. But trading it, the premiums are probably strong if you have a month-long or week-long thesis on the underlying. Palantir right here, 68. Uber at 66. Hood, 42.37. Wow. What a move by Hood. Up 7%. Tesla still holding 420. And MicroStrategy right here at 347, which is not bad at all for MSTR. Not bad at all. Bsoft says I use TSLL for options that I don't, so I don't have to touch my actual Tesla shares. Yes, I agree. That's not the worst situation to do it. Can you do a poll? Yes, let's do a poll. Let's see what people think, if this is bear trap or not, or bull trap or not. I don't know, bro. I don't think it's a bull trap, but granted, my analysis comes from what I'm looking at when it comes to inflation. If inflation is coming down or it's not as bad as expected, I don't know why it has to be a bull trap. Along with the fact that tech earnings, I think, are about to crush. And I don't know who gets scared of holding their tech stocks that are producing amazing earnings and sells them to buy a 10-year, put into the money market funds. I don't know. Especially with, you got Trump. You got Trump coming in. And whether it's crypto or deregulation, that is a macro tailwind that might not happen immediately, but it's one of those things I don't think you undermine over the next 4 years. And so I think that if inflation, which has been the big boogeyman over the past 2 weeks, which has caused this 10-year to get to basically 5%, we need that thing to come down. And if it's coming down in the data, or at least it's stabilizing, I don't see that as bearish. I don't know where that ultimately becomes bearish. Lilly's down 5%. Is there any news? There has to be some news on Lilly for it to be down 5%. Yeah. Oh, Lilly's down 6%. Maybe they got a downgrade. Let's see. Who owns Eli Lilly, by the way? This is a phenomenal company. It's just very volatile because it's in the pharma industry and there's tons of FDA headlines that can take it up or down. But this thing was at $1,000 a couple months ago. And it's not a bad company. It does look like they have some weak sales of weight loss drug in the fourth quarter. Looks like is Hims down because of this? Wow, Eli Lilly down 6% now. Hims is up on this. Interesting. So Hims going the opposite direction. So on Lilly, the company said it expects $3.5 billion in Mounjaro sales in the fourth quarter and $1.9 billion for Zepbound. Analysts had expected the drugs to bring in $5.3 billion and $2 billion. So the analysts expected $7.5 billion. Eli Lilly is bringing in 5.7 billion. So that's basically 2 billion lower than what the analysts expected. That's not the best. That is not the best. Eli Lilly CEO on CNBC. Okay, let's take a look at him. Let's see what they have to say. Market's still holding on. Palantir 67.94, Tesla 420, Robinhood still above 42, 42.41. Wow, Hood's not slowing down. Hood is not slowing down currently right now. Okay, let's watch a little bit of Eli Lilly CEO. Again, this is a big company, guys. $800 billion market cap. Let's see what they're saying about these drugs, and then we'll get to some other headlines.
And it's looking even brighter, but then you said that it's going to be, I heard you say, somewhat the same. I mean, I'm trying to understand. The reason I point this out is, I was critical about the way you talked about the third quarter because I couldn't figure it out.
Right.
Fourth quarter, if I can't figure it out, at a certain point, I don't want episodic volatility from Eli Lilly.
Sure.
I'm used to Eli Lilly going like this, not Eli Lilly being an oscillator. When are we going to get numbers which just indicate this is a straight out ramp and I don't have to worry about the granularity?
Well, we put our best effort into this latest
True.
projection. We're doing something others have never done, right? We're growing a pharmaceutical product at a rate and a scale that really is new for us and new for the industry. We're going to get some things wrong, and we have. We saw destocking in the channel in the second half. We've put that into our forward outlook.
Right.
We don't expect that to come back. We've seen ups and downs in various parts of the market, patients switching between the diabetes form and the obesity form. Prediction, has been tougher, but to be honest, the underlying fundamentals are incredible. The total GLP-1 market last year grew 45%. We grew 60%. And we grew share in the fourth quarter. In fact, Jim, we're now the market leader in both diabetes and obesity in new patient starts, crossing Novo. So we're in great position as we set up the year. And the other big issue has been manufacturing and supply. We said to the street we'd hit 50% growth in units in the second half of this year over the same period last. We hit that. Now we're saying for the first half of next year, first semester, 60% growth. So some of that supply is coming online. That's growth on top of growth. And we're excited about 25.
So what is
All right. So Lilly CEO even downplaying some of these changes in guidance and saying that it's not that big of a deal. Eli Lilly really getting hit right here, dude. Now a $700 billion market cap, down $50 in a day, 6.7%. I've never known enough about Eli Lilly to actually buy their stock. I've heard a lot about them. I mean, it's a company that's been around for a very long time. Again, one of the top 15 companies in the world in terms of market cap. It's just I've never touched pharma, and so I don't really know how to navigate pharma as well, because sometimes you get a headline where the drug's not selling as much, and if you don't really understand it, it could cause some volatility. But this one down 7%. Looks like this is the only one that's really getting hit. AMD starting to go red, down about 1%. That's kind of weird that AMD starting to go red right there. Is NVIDIA going red? And no, NVIDIA's, there's a red candle, but it's not red. Meta's definitively red, down 2%. DJT was up 20% yesterday. Now that's down 5%. Rocket Lab's up. Verizon slightly down. Shake Shack's down. United Health is down. That was up 5% yesterday, so that makes sense. Pfizer, J&J, and Moderna are all down, following Lilly. Nike's down a little bit. There's not too many stocks that are down. TLT's still down because 10 years not coming down yet. Costco's flat. eBay's down 1%. Pretty much everything else is green. AMD going red is really weird. That's not performing like any of the other semis. That one is a bit weird. NVO is down too. Yeah, I would imagine they're probably down on this Lilly headline. That's the other thing about trading the pharma industry. You're kind of trading the whole industry, even if you have an individual name. And individual names can outperform, but the industry moves together. It's kind of like crypto, right? There are individual names that are good, but a lot of times if the whole industry is getting hit, you're going to see some volatility. Bitcoin just below 97, 96.5 now. Tesla retracing from 422 to 415. So people are taking some profits at 950. People are indeed taking some profits right here. Robinhood's still holding on to a 6.8% gain, which is incredible. 42.67 now at 42.32. And then SoFi catching up, 14.50. Not bad. Up 3% here on SoFi. Fartcoin is up 48%. That is correct. Again, I don't like it. It kind of makes me a little bearish that there's that much froth there, but I mean, I don't know, dude. You're going to need some like massive correction to wipe it out. Or to be honest, maybe I'm dead wrong and it's not froth. And there legit is a real community that loves Fartcoin and that believes in the thesis, which I don't know what the thesis is, but maybe there is a thesis. Maybe. I I can't come to its conclusion. Also, a butthole coin is another one that, let's see if that one's up. That thing was up 40% 2 days ago. Butthole coin is, yeah, it's up 60%. Why not? Why freaking not? Of course. This is the new economy that we live in. Butthole coin. There you go. 60%. That's what we got. Is Rivian dumping? Let's see. Rivian. Rivian. It's up 2% right now. Not getting too much of a little dump right here yet. I'm curious, bro. I'm curious because we have not had a green day like this in 2025 after really good data. Like we had one green day, I think 2 Fridays ago. And it was nice because there was a little bit of rebound from a crappy Thursday. I think it was January 2nd or January 3rd. But we have not had a really green day after good data. Today is one of the first days in 2025 where that's happening. Does it last through the rest of the day? Or is it one of those things where the bearishness of the market is enough to take it down? The algorithms of the market are enough to take it down. If there is any underlying bearish themes that are being shown. Netflix at 841. CEG, Constellation Energy, that's up 3%. Celsius right there up 0.26%. United Health just went red. Texas Roadhouse is slightly green. Shopify just above 200. Transmedics was down 15% yesterday. It recovered everything it lost from the Scorpion Capital short report. The CEO came out and said that we're going to grow 80% this year and basically stop freaking out. And so that one recovered a little bit, but it's still down a lot from where it was back in July. Grab is losing the green pre-market, correct. Jason will be on today after hours. Jason will be on, so we'll have Technical Tuesday with Jason later today. The Dixie is down 109.5. The dollar's down. The 10-year is barely moving. So maybe that could also be a reason we're seeing some pockets of the market go red because these things are not really being affected aggressively, even with this PPI data. Snapchat is down. Is it a good buy with TikTok ban? I think Snapchat and Meta benefit off TikTok ban, but the reason it's down is potentially, again, going back to the Bloomberg report last night, TikTok, even if it's not being sold to Elon Musk, TikTok might be exploring in the next 5 days who the hell to sell themselves to because they probably don't want to lose $50 billion. I mean, TikTok's US business is worth 50 to 70 billion. If that's banned overnight, that money's gone. Those users are gone. Like at some point, like you got to ask yourself a question. As much as the CCP wants to control it, their economy's struggling. ByteDance still is somewhat of an independent company from the CCP. I'm sure they don't want to lose 50 billion bucks. And so, maybe these stocks are moving off the fact that TikTok's going to find someone to sell it to, even if it's not Elon Musk. But then the question is, who would buy TikTok? Like, put in the chat, who do you think would buy TikTok if it's not Elon? If it's not Elon, if it's not X, it's not Zucks. There's no way in hell that's happening. It's obviously not Snapchat. They can't afford it. It's not Sundar or Satya because, I just don't think the government would allow that. It has to be like an independent company that has the resources to do it. Walmart was in the running to buy them back in 2020 when Trump first said he wanted to ban them. Walmart put in a bid to buy them. And then Trump changed his mind. But, maybe it's a company like that if it's not a tech company. I don't know if Walmart would necessarily make TikTok successful because they're not a tech company, but it would be pretty wild to see if that happens. Oracle, I could see Oracle doing that because they already have their database. They already have the server farms for their data. But the problem is, is Oracle going to? Oracle's never been a B2C social media company. Is that a vertical they get into? I think Larry Ellison wouldn't be afraid to get into that vertical, but it would cost them a decent amount of money. I mean, Oracle's market cap right here is $430 billion. If they pay $50 billion for this, they're going to have to probably shed a lot of stock or pay in stock to get that acquisition done. Amazon, that would be crazy. I mean, dude, if Amazon could just pump all their products that are ironically from China on a Chinese app, I don't know if the government would allow any of the hyperscalers to buy TikTok. I think they would think it would be getting way too powerful at that point. I don't think Oracle wants that business. I agree. I don't think Oracle wants that business either. All right, guys, we're getting a little bit of a downturn, a little bit of red. Things are still green, but we are definitely seeing some red. Eli Lilly getting hammered, down 8%. Snapchat down 5%. Tesla was at 422. Now it's at 413. So you are seeing people take some profits. If we actually give up all of the green, meaning Tesla goes red, then I would say the PPI pump got faded. But as long as we keep some of the green, maybe it's okay. SMCI was up about 4%. Now it's up 2%. S&P giving up some of its gains as well. Was that up 0.7%? Now it's 0.2%. PayPal's up 2.3%. That's nice. Oh, shout out to Alex Chris. He liked my tweet yesterday. PayPal's donating $1 million, and they're doing a bunch of other things in LA to help with the fires. So amazing leadership by Alex Chris. I mean, it's always nice to see public CEOs that are actually looking out for communities and, taking away some of shareholder capital to do something that's the right thing to do in that moment. Uber, Dara is also doing the same thing. So Uber's donating a ton of money to different firms in Los Angeles. So it's nice to see them stepping up and helping a bit there. Robinhood 42.16, Palantir 67.23. Palantir wasn't able to get to 69 today. Palantir, we topped out at 68.23, it looks like. Yeah, 68.23 right before we tried to make a run at 68.50. Now it's 67.29 currently right now. Quantum is getting some love. Quantum's moving. D-Wave's up 17%. It's not up as much as it was up, but it's still up. Rigetti's up 25. IONQ's up 4. And QUBT is up 15. So it looks like buyers are stepping in. Now, granted, I think if buyers didn't step in today, I don't know when the hell they would step in. These names were down literally 70%, 50% last week, and another 30% yesterday as of Monday, yesterday. So if buyers didn't step in after being down 70%, I mean, I don't know when they would step in. So it makes sense that they're getting some momentum. Now we just got to see if that can continue to hold. Rock Lab as well, up 2% after being down 10% yesterday. AMD just took a hit. Oof, yeah, AMD took a hit. Dude, AMD's earnings are going to be, I feel like AMD earnings are going to be, like, everyone's going to pay attention to AMD. Everyone is going to try to figure out if this thing actually is like the most undervalued semiconductor name in the industry, or is it a value trap or a growth trap? I think a lot of people are going to be paying attention to this one. Why is Grab tanking? I don't know. I would imagine it still has to do with the strong dollar. You know what I would really want? Yeah, Grab down 1.4. What I would really want is for the dollar to get to 115, which is where it topped out at in 2022, and for Grab to go like below $4, even into like the low threes, and then just buy a ton of it. Because the only reason Grab would take that big of a hit is because of the dollar going up. Now, why do I say 115? I think that's where the dollar truly tops out at. I mean, I hope we top out at 110, which is where we're at right now. But if we actually go higher and we have that downstream effect on the international stocks, Nubank, Mercado Libre, Grab, etc., I think that would be the buying opportunity, because there's nothing fundamental about any of those names that would deserve to take a hit outside of currency exchanges. And Trump's going to resolve that. We're going to get that dollar to come down like we have to. So if that's the reason why we take a dip, I would encourage it, but I don't know if the dollar actually gets that strong. 110 feels like it should be topping out there, but 115 is the actual top from 2022, where it was at. Yes, I own Grab. My average is basically 470, 475. That's my average on Grab. Any new news on NVIDIA? No, so nothing really new on NVIDIA. Remember yesterday, for those that didn't see the headline, they put out a report. NVIDIA is basically about to go red. All right, so market's kind of fading the semis pump right here. NVIDIA told the Biden administration that they're really tired of him, and they put out this press release essentially saying that the Biden administration is screwing us in the last 5 days of its administration by putting on 200 new pages of regulatory hurdles to stop us from selling into China in the names of American security. And they were praising the Trump administration. I don't think Jensen Huang lets this press release come out because they never talk about political things ever. Like NVIDIA doesn't do that. You know, NVIDIA is like the perfect kind of child. They never rough in anyone's feathers. I think Jensen did that to kind of give a signal to Trump that he's on Trump's side. and that he's tired of the regulations that the Biden administration is putting on him. The most, weirdest part to me about this was that this is in the last 5 days of his administration. We know that none of these regulations actually are going to be implemented or have a realistic chance of becoming law because Trump has to sign off on them. Like Biden can't make them law in the last couple of days. So even NVIDIA acknowledging that this is probably not even enforceable, as they say right here, although the rule is not enforceable for 120 days, it is already undercutting U.S. interests. As the first Trump administration demonstrated, America wins through innovation, competition, and by sharing our technologies with the world, not by retreating behind a wall of government overreach. NVIDIA basically giving the Biden administration the middle finger, to me, is them saying, hey, we're ready to work with Trump, and I think Jensen will be meeting Trump pretty soon. I think Jensen's getting ready to begin the politicking that he needs to do with the Trump administration. NVIDIA right here officially going red, 133.12, following all the other semiconductors as they are getting sold off to begin the 10 a.m. hour of the market open. Wow, the 10-year just hit 4.8. There you go. That's probably another reason. The 10-year literally just hit 4.8. It's at 4.797 now. That could be another reason for some of the pain that we're seeing. Also, speaking of Trump, this is the inauguration fund that all these CEOs have been donating to. $215 million. That's an all-time record. Elon, Zucks, Bezos, Tim Cook, Sam Altman, JP Morgan, McDonald's, Lockheed Martin, Comcast, Delta, Johnson & Johnson, General Motors, Robinhood put in $2 million. All of these guys putting in a ton of money into the Trump inauguration fund. And all of them basically deciding it's time to work with the Trump administration. So that's what we got in the context of that inauguration. That inauguration is happening next Monday. I'll be streaming it live. It'll be a long day. It's probably going to be like a, 6-7 hour stream. It's going to be a lot of stuff to cover. So we are going to see Trump get into office again. Tesla right here, 413. That's up 2.5%. Hood still holding 42. Palantir 66. Bitcoin just above 96, but definitely below 97 at 96.3. And then SoFi right here at 14.5 currently right now. What's that money going to be used for? So apparently Trump is hosting, there's a lot of money for a ton of events that happened that day, but Trump's hosting a crypto ball. Apparently there's going to be like this fancy dinner after, this is what I heard, a fancy dinner after the inauguration, and it's going to be crypto themed. I don't know if they're going to have like orange Bitcoin signs all over the place, but like they're going to be spending a ton of that money just on like the festivities of the day. And I guess some of it might be crypto oriented. So it's going to be an extravagant day. They have $215 million to just spend however they like. It's so weird. I've never heard of an inaugural fund. Like when Biden was president, I never heard of a fund for the inauguration, much less heard of companies donating millions of dollars to that fund. This is the first time I'm ever hearing about it. And maybe that's because there weren't a ton of companies donating in 2020, or, it just wasn't that big of a thing. But they are doing that. So they're wasting the money. Well, you got to remember, dude, these people that are giving him $1 million, like Elon Musk or Zuckerberg giving $1 million to the Trump inaugural fund. $1 million to Zucks. We got to do the math. It has to be pennies, right? Maybe a couple of dollars compared to like $1 million for him has to be like $1 to me, just given the size of his wealth. So to him, $1 million and you get access to the inauguration, you get access to the inside details, all that stuff. It's got to be worth it. And it looks like that's why they're doing it. What else do we have right here? Oh, the market's closed on Monday? Really? The market's closed for the inauguration? I didn't know that. The market closed for inauguration. I did not know that. Wait, when exactly? Hold on. When is the inauguration? The inauguration is Monday, January 20th. Oh yeah, the market is closed on that day. Yeah, the market is closed on that day. All right, so then it'll be just a live stream covering the inauguration at that point. Oh, and MLK Day, correct, and MLK Day. So they're doing the inauguration on MLK Day, and so the market will be closed regardless because it's MLK Day. All right, NVIDIA going a little green right here. Got a nice green candle from 133.07, up 0.53 Tessie still holding 413. And then Amazon at 220 here right now. Okay, here's a question. Here's a question for the chat. We actually had a conversation about this on Robinhood Weekly last night in the last hour. I'm curious what you guys have to say. So here we go. By the way, 60% of you said it's not a bull trap. 40% of you said it is a bull trap on the last poll. All right, here we go. One stock to own for the next 5 years. Which one do you pick? We had a really good discussion yesterday on Robinhood Weekly about this, going deeper into it. NVIDIA or Amazon? I am really curious to see what you guys say about this one. NVIDIA or Amazon? It's almost 50-50 already. Yep, it's 50. This is a hard one. This is not an easy one. This is not an easy one. People might think it's easy. This one's not easy. And I'll talk about why I think it's a little bit of a harder choice, but it's not as easy to be able to do it. All right, so put your reasoning in the chat. It's between NVIDIA and Amazon. It's between NVIDIA. So I know we have some Teslas here, but like between these two, if you had to pick, what is the one you would pick? I had a feeling it'd be 50-50, bro. This is not that easy. Amazon's in the lead. Amazon at 51%. So here's how I break this down. I'm curious what you guys have to say about this as well. My thing is Amazon, I think you can sleep a little better at night because it's Amazon, right? It probably won't grow as much as NVIDIA. I mean, it's definitely not going to grow as much. It's not going to compound at 50 to 70%. But Amazon's not going anywhere. AWS is not going anywhere. And at the end of the day, operating margins are going up. People are going to always buy stuff online. So you can feel comfort in Amazon. NVIDIA, there's still some unknowns over the next 5 years in terms of how cyclical the business is, how much CapEx is going to be spent. Is robotics going to be the big industry? Is self-driving going to be really worth it? I believe in all those bull cases, but still, I think the far majority of people, if they had a gun to their head with all their net worth, they might end up going the Amazon route because they just know Amazon's not going anywhere. And it's a bit more diversified, as you guys are saying right here, yes. But I don't think NVIDIA is a bad choice. I'm just saying this is a hell of a question. And even Crossroads last night on the weekly was struggling with it. Even Tanner, who's like a big NVIDIA bull, he was struggling with this question. I was like, it's not that easy to say NVIDIA on this one. If I said NVIDIA or Microsoft, to be honest, I probably would pick NVIDIA because I don't love Microsoft. If it was NVIDIA or Apple, I would pick NVIDIA, easily. But with Amazon, it's a little different. There's a little bit difference here when it comes to how we think of Amazon. Okay, let's get an update on PPI as well and get some analysis on what's happening there on the street. And then we'll keep going from there.
At the underlying numbers of PPI, Steve.
Hey, David. Yeah, finally some good news on inflation. The PPI, the producer price index, coming in better than expected, raising some hopes that the worst may be avoided in tomorrow's consumer price index report, which is the more important of the two. Headline coming in 0.2 versus 0.4 last month, and an expectation or an estimate of 0.4. The core flat 0.0. Goose egg versus 0.2. Take out food, energy, and trade. It actually fell 0.1%. But the headline's still showing some in the pipeline, 3.3 versus 3.5. Looking at the details, food decline.
Robinhood 42.78, guys. I'll check the resistance on 43, but maybe Robinhood's making a run for 43.
After massive increases last month, some of them related to the avian flu, other issues were out there, but they were down this month. Energy, though, popping higher. Trade down 0.1%. That's the measure of margins out there among wholesalers and retailers. One concern is the domestic air travel prices rising 6.8% on the month. Some of that could carry over into the CPI. But good news there, services, another goose egg. On commentary nationwide, senior economist Ben Ayers writes, this tempers the higher end of expectations for tomorrow's CPI report and clears the way for softer inflation readings in early 2025. That's one of the expectations out there, that we don't get the big numbers in January and February that we got last year. Probabilities, well, June, 55% for just one cut. That's the first time it gets over 50% is in June. And
wow, we actually got above 50% in June. So this PPI data is finally making the market get a little bit more bullish on cuts, even if it's 6 months away in June. Robinhood's at 42.85. It's up 8.22%. This can't be because of Bitcoin. It can't only be because of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin's up, but it's not like up. Let me check the resistance for 43. 43 resistance on Hood is 17. Oh boy, we should break 43. 17,000 shares. We should break it. We should break it. We should. Oh, there we go. We're close. We are close. 3 cents away. It might be a little psychological to break it, but I think we should break it. SoFi as well, doing good. Where's SoFi? Wow, SoFi 1470. Not bad. Oh, I just got the report. I just got the report on Hood from Morgan Stanley. Let's go. Shout out to my plug. He just sent me this. I'm going to download it right now. We're going to read it live. This might be the reason why Hood's pumping as well. Let me download this right here. Let me download this. Okay, the download's not working, but I have the screenshot. I have the screenshot for it. SoFi got an $18 price target today. Whoa. That's big. That's the highest price target on the street. Is that confirmed? SoFi got an $18 price target. I didn't see that headline at all this morning. That's huge if that's the case. That is huge. Okay, so let's go into this Hood thing. I have the screenshot of the link. Yeah, let me pull this up right here. What is their... I don't know if they have a price target on this. I think they have to. Just dropped. Okay, so that's big for SoFi. That's big for SoFi. All right, here we go. Morgan Stanley adding Hood to our financials finest list. We add Hood to our financials finest list, given sustainable business model and multiple paths for growth that could surprise to the upside in our 2025 global banks outlook. We also see Hood as a key beneficiary for a resurgent retail trading backdrop. Our $55 price target offers 40% upside. So 55 from Mr. Morgan Stanley. Let's read a little bit of this. Currently, Hood has 15 to 20% market share of brokerage accounts with 24 million accounts, yet under 30 bips share of the 70 trillion U.S. household investable assets. We see durable 20% net new asset growth as Hood expands platform capabilities, enabling them to capture greater share of wallet from their existing 24 million customers and appeal to a wider set of customers in large and growing addressable markets. This should enable Hood to grow client assets from 6,000 account to over 10,000 with longer-term opportunities to over 100,000 account, which is more in line with Schwab. We also see Hood's product velocity accelerating as they expand the platform with recent initiatives, including active trading desktop, credit card, retirement, Europe expansion. We see a catalyst-rich path of those initiatives to take hold, contribute to results as new initiatives launch in 2025 that we expect, including event contracts, banking, staking, stablecoins, more tokens, and a new Asia hub. Wow. Bullish. Robinhood 42.99. I think we're getting to 43. I think we're doing it. Yep, there you go. 43 on Hood. There you go. 43 on Robin the Hood. Dude, not bad. That's a hell of a report. That's a hell of a report. Reading from the last paragraph here, Hood is quickly addressing the graduation risk, notably with the recent acquisition of Trade PMR. That's a TAM expander and will enable Hood to offer and monetize advice solutions. More near term, we see a supportive backdrop for retail trading as animal spirits revive under a new U.S. administration, aka Trump, with scope for deregulation and a recovery in M&A capital markets activity, including IPOs. They see a 15% revenue CAGR for the next 3 years with a largely fixed cost base and very high incremental margins. Yeah, dude, it makes sense. It makes sense. Wow, it's busting through 43. Holy crap. Oh my. Oh my. That is a nice thing for Hood. That is a nice thing for Hood. Tesla right here at 417, Amazon 220, Oracle 156, Grab down 1.6, NVIDIA going back to green, but Hood kind of the story of the morning right now in terms of its green. SoFi catching up 5%. And then Palantir 67.50. Let me see if I can find that SoFi upgrade. Dude, $18 is a street high price target. That's nice to see. Citibank, that is nice to see. That is not too bad at all. Not too bad. Amid, is Robinhood a buy right now? The answer that I've been giving on this is the same answer. Like it depends on your time horizon and do you have a long-term thesis on it. I think Robinhood, ends the year closer to 50 to 55. But if we get a really bad macro-driven year where, let's say, inflation spikes back up, let's say, we have unemployment fears, yada, yada, Robinhood's going to get hit, right? And Robinhood's going to get hit because it trades with the market. It is a proxy on the market. However, and I wrote about this on Twitter last night, they are diversifying rapidly in a lot of different sectors. And although their diversification doesn't mean that they're incongruent with how the market operates. I think they're going to get to the point where they can be independent from market volatility. It'll take a couple years. And so to me, if we get any dips because the market tanks, that's an amazing dip to buy on Hood. Because if you're long Hood because you believe in Vlad, you believe in the leadership, you believe in execution, you believe in their product moat, their velocity of execution, all of that stuff, the fact that they're doing 3 events this year on new products, which means they're shipping a ton of stuff into the marketplace, going to make Robinhood Gold better, crypto better, etc., then those are dips you buy pretty easily. But that doesn't mean 43 is the best buy because it could tank back down to 38. But it also, I could see it going much higher than 43 towards the end of the year if the macro holds on. So that's kind of how I'm thinking of Hood and of stuff. But I don't have a problem buying here. I bought at 42.50 last week or 2 weeks ago. So like this price doesn't scare me at all. Market cap's 38 billion. They have 5 billion in cash. Enterprise value is 33 billion, growing in Q4, going to be more than 95%. So that is not expensive by any sense of the imagination. It's just a question of them continuing to execute. SoFi 1475, MSTR 343. KBH Home. This is a company that reported earnings yesterday. I've never heard of this company. It's a home builder, particularly in California. A lot of you guys knew about it. They increased their guidance, which was not too bad. So they're up 4% right here and maybe a little bullish for the rest of the home sector. Meta coming back a little bit, 603. DJT's down 4%. Google's up. Rocket Lab's up 3%. The Qs are up. Nubank going red. Same with Grab. That's the dollar affecting Nubank and Grab together if they're both red. And then Shopify at 102. Hood 4310. Tesla trying to make its way back to 420 at 417 currently right now. Not bad. Not bad. How much did I buy of Hood? I think I bought 50 shares at 42.50. This a couple weeks ago. Round about that range. So not a crazy buy, but still, I don't have any fear buying. It was so funny. I remember I was in India. I think I told you guys this, and Robinhood busted through 25, and 25 was the number it kept getting rejected at for like 7 months, and it busted through because they officially announced their investor day happening December 4th, and that day I bought 50 shares at 25 because I learned my lesson from Palantir, which is that look, when the company is showing real strength based on real catalyst, you buy that strength. You don't get scared because it's going to like violate your cost basis. And I remember that day, people were like, how are you buying it at a 52-week high? It's like, well, it's because it's cheap. And there's catalysts that I'm seeing that can get them to go higher. So I feel the same at 43. It's just that now, 25 is a little bit different from 43 because we've gone up a lot from the lows. And so any market volatility could take this one down. It's just like, where do they put it at? If this thing goes to $30, the market cap on Hood will be 25 billion and the enterprise value will be 20 billion because they have 5 billion in cash. And so it's a question of just how cheap will the market let it get. And as of now, it's showing that they are not ready to let it get that cheap. Thomas says you can't just look at one quarter's growth rate. Could be cheap, but they aren't growing 90% going forward, which is what matters. Yeah, I agree. And that's why I've been cautious on Q1, because if Q1 sucks, or not sucks, but it's just not as good as Q4, then obviously the market might not give Hood all the momentum after, a potentially billion revenue quarter, because Q1's not going to grow at the same level and rate. But, I think the market's kind of forgiving about that because they know, Hood can't grow 90% every quarter. But if Hood can grow 30%, even if it's not 90%, that's still pretty good because they're comparing it to 2024, which was a great year. And those are tough comps. So I think just having that blowout quarter will be good for them. And then if they can sustain any of that momentum, that'll help them continue to keep going. Oh, we got Stacey on CNBC. All right, let's get into some of the semiconductor stuff. Get some analysis on why the semis are getting hit. Let's pull this up right here. Stacey's one of the best analysts from Bernstein, understands NVIDIA pretty well. So let's get his take on what's going on here.
Speed up the construction of AI centers and strengthen national security. This is just one day after announcing a new framework that would limit the scale of AI chips and their sale outside of the U.S. Joining us now is Bernstein analyst Stacey Raskin. Stacey, always good to have you. What do you make of these newest regulations and the impact perhaps on some of the companies you cover, in particular NVIDIA?
Yeah, it's a little hard to judge impact right now, but we can talk about what they're doing. So they're putting constraints on the amount of compute capacity that can be shipped out of the U.S. to a certain number of countries. There's 18 countries where they're sort of like favored nation status, kind of business as usual. Customers in those countries can pretty much build as much as they want in those countries. There's a set of countries, China and Russia and other ones that are under arms embargo where you're not allowed to ship anything. None of those things are really any change. It's in the middle, the other countries where the interesting sort of dynamics happen. Those countries have very sharp limits on how much compute capacity can get put in them, unless the customers themselves sort of agree to conform to certain standards, basically, be good citizens and the like. And if that's the case, then those customers can build in those countries, but those customers will be limited by how much compute capacity they can deploy. So if you kind of run through it, it's probably manageable for now. But my guess would be as we go along over the next years, these constraints in general are probably unlikely to loosen, right? We're sort of in an arms race with some other actors in the world, and these constraints in general are likely to tighten up. And in general, that sort of thing it's not great, right? I think right now the overall demand for this stuff is such that this can probably be worked through. And like I said, it does seem like it's workable, but it remains to be seen how these dynamics will play out as we go forward, and whether and how these different kinds of constraints continue to get tightened. And now we have the new administration coming in, which throws a whole a new.
I know that career, right? I mean, well, are your expectations they're going to maintain the rules that have been put in place?
Yeah, I don't. The companies that have been impacted, NVIDIA and some others, have sort of been going at the new administration to try to, to advocate for themselves. And I got to be honest, I kind of understand why the Biden administration did this, but at the same time, doing it a week before the administration change, it feels a little shaky. So we'll see what the Trump administration does. But
it definitely feels shaky. 5 days before Biden leaves, he tends to, he puts up these regulations like that. That is so weird. There's no way these regulations can get into law, but it's kind of like 5 days before you're trying to push it, knowing it's going to hurt NVIDIA, knowing it's going to piss them off. And it's just like NVIDIA had enough of it at this point.
I want to say I'm not sure that the incoming administration, I mean, in general, this idea that we need to be tough on these other areas and we need to be U.S. first. I mean, these are things that I think the new administration is going to want. So I don't know whether or not they will be pulling these. There's some aspects of this that maybe they're not going to like, but my guess is in general, over time, the sanctions probably never get looser in general. They'll probably continue to get tighter.
How do you explain to folks why you think the administration did this?
Well, I mean, it's their last chance to do something like this. And again, the general idea, like trying to control what's out there from a national security standpoint, I understand the rationale. I'm not sure I necessarily totally agree with it, but I understand it. This is their last chance to do it. And again, they're going to force the new administration, like if they want to do something about it, to do something about it. But they put a stake in the ground one way or the other with 1 week to go.
Stacey, today's highest performance chips are tomorrow's lower performance chips. I mean, how does that end up working? Is it always just that we want to stay ahead, so one day they'll be able to get these chips, or not?
Yeah, I mean, like I think when you go through the regulations from yesterday, and we did it, it's preliminary, but when you read through it, as they're written, like I said, it doesn't seem like it's draconian as people. I think when some of the news stories on this came out last week, people were really, really worried that they wouldn't be able to ship anything, or that the amount that they would ship in general would be very, very curtailed. If you look at the favored nation countries, they're the major ones where a lot of this is going, and the U.S. guys can build as much as they need here in the U.S. and they have leeway to build outside of the U.S. to a fairly large degree. So when you sort of read through it, they weren't necessarily as draconian. They were fairly severe. Don't get me wrong. I was a little surprised when the news flow started to come up, but they weren't as completely draconian as maybe people had feared they might have been. And so, but this sort of stuff destroys volatility. And let's be honest. When the new administration comes in, it's going to be volatility every day. I've said this before, but when Trump was president last time, I'm spending every morning waking up. The first thing I do is check Twitter to see what the policy of the day is. So we'll probably be going back to some of that. Volatility in general is going to be higher.
Yeah, we'll be doing the same thing you are. Although I think it's Truth Social these days, not X.
Social.
Yeah. Stacey, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. So again, we're going to have to see if Trump is consistent with Biden in terms of these regulations on semiconductor names. But overall, Stacey does agree that it's a little bit aggressive before Biden ends up leaving office. Hood continuing to get some love, got to 43.25, up 9% on the day. I'm going to check resistance at 44. It doesn't look like Hood wants to give this up either. It doesn't look like they want to give this up. At 44, resistance is 6,400 shares, which is not a lot. The real resistance for Hood is at 45. You got 118,000 shares. So 45, and psychologically, 45 is going to be tough. Is it possible? Yeah, it's probably going to take earnings to get there. But if we can get there, we do have the inauguration. Look, here's the thing. If Trump does all these Bitcoin, policies, or executive orders, and in general, you just get more, momentum. Hood's a great Bitcoin proxy, right? So could it get to 45 after the inauguration? Maybe. There's a shot. It is very close, but it's got to hold onto these levels. It's nice, though. It's nice, dude. 43.15. It is very nice, up 9% right here. This was a day I think all of us have been waiting for. We all kind of knew, like I've been saying for the past couple of days, I think Hood deserves to be fair value at 45. Just based on what I'm looking at for Q4 growth, it does not deserve to be in the high 37, 38, 39s. However, also acknowledging and being humble enough to realize the 10 years up, the dollar is up, and it's like those are macro things that you can't ignore when it comes to a stock that is based on trading, especially in the markets. And so if we can hold on to 43 and close the day at 43, I would be happy. It's just a question of if we can keep it. Kenneth says, I opened positions on SoFi, SoundHound, RCAT, and doubled my position on Big Bear AI on yesterday's dip. Red Cat is up 8% right now. SoundHound is up 5%, and Big Bear AI is also up 9%. So it looks like some of the spec names are definitely getting some love right here. Quantum doing okay. Rigetti at 33, IONQ at 3, D-Wave up 17%, QUBT up 19%. The only spec name that's not really getting any love is AMC, down about 1.85%. Where is Palantir? Palantir 67.50. So Palantir not getting above 68 yet, but even though we touched it. 67.49 right here, up 3.8%. Even if we close above 67.50 for Palantir, that'd be great. That would not be bad if we can hold those levels. What are you guys? First of all, let me check the poll. Wow, 51% said Amazon, 49% said NVIDIA. I think it's the same reason everyone was already talking about, which is just the safety of knowing it's Amazon versus NVIDIA. All right, here's my next poll. I'm curious what you guys have to say about this one. Does Palantir tank after earnings? What do you think? Tank, let's call it 20%. That would be a tank. Gut feeling, what do you think? Does Palantir tank after earnings? What does your gut tell you on where you think this stock trades? Banks have earnings tomorrow. Yeah, dude, tomorrow's going to be important. So I'll be live tomorrow at 8:20. I'll be live 25 minutes earlier. Not only do we have all the bank earnings, which is going to be wild because we got a lot of them, we have CPI. So tomorrow is going to be a very, very important day. I'll be live early, but we've got a lot to discuss tomorrow for the pre-markets. 52% of you say yes, Palantir tanks after earnings. So basically 50-50 right here. I don't know, bro. I really don't know. Because all of it is contingent on growth. See, this is the difference between Palantir and Robinhood. Robinhood, we can project their growth because they give us numbers every month. And obviously it's a different business than Palantir, but we can see the growth. With Palantir, they don't give us the amount of deals they closed in September, right? So we really have to just kind of use whatever headlines we can use to put together the pieces to try to figure out what the growth will be like. Now they're guiding for 776 million. I think they're going to do closer to 800 million in revenue. If they surprise with 850 or something, that'd be amazing. I'm just worried that expectations are going to be high given the stock is run, and maybe Palantir doesn't live up to those expectations because they didn't expect to have to live up to $70 price expectations, right? They probably thought, hey, maybe 30, 35 is what they had to justify. Justifying 70 or 67 is just a bit tougher for them. And so that is the only fear I have. But if they come in and they say, guys, this is real, we're growing 45%. If they do something like that, I think no matter how expensive it is, the street's going to get excited because then it will give them verifiable evidence from a future growth rate perspective that everything they were thinking is correct. And that would just create a lot of momentum, I think, in the stock. We're going to have to see. We are going to have to see. Now, granted, if we do get a crash, it's literally 50-50. Yeah, everyone's 50-50 on this. If we do get a crash, I would not complain about having to buy more. Same thing about Hood, dude. If Hood goes back to 20, we were talking about it last on Hood Weekly, I would buy that so quick. Like I wouldn't be upset about that. The same thing about Palantir. I don't have tons of options on Palantir where I'm like needed to be above a certain price. I'm not gambling on calls. So if it's literally just the stock going down and me being able to add, I wouldn't be that upset. It's just a question of how bad is it going to go? Like, does it go back to 30? I don't think so. Does it go back to 40? I don't think so. Could it go to 50? Yeah, I think 50, 55. I think we can get there if things are bad. We have an earnings miss. But like a real 30, 40% decline from here, I don't know if that's easy to get there. Sashi says, I'm looking forward to the price to go down for Palantir after earnings. I haven't bought much recently and I want to grab as much as I can. Yeah, I mean, this is the real thing. If you're a Palantir bull, I don't think you want the price to go down, but if it does, you're not upset. And that's the difference. That separates the bag holders from the bulls. The bag holders are going to be upset because they bought the top, or they bought the local top at 70, 80 bucks. And, now they have to DCA aggressively to even break even. But people that have been in this thing since $7, I mean, if you really are getting even more conviction and you want to add to your position, I don't think you're going to be that upset if you get another opportunity. Here's a better question. Let me ask a better question here in the poll, since this one's 50-50. Let's ask a better question. The question's going to be, where is the Palantir bottom? Let's do 50, let's do 40, let's do 60, and then let's do 30. Let's see what you guys think. My argument, my choice is 50. I think it's 50 if it really gets hit. Let's see what you guys think. All right, let's get some other updates as well on inflation from, actually, no, let's get some updates on the wildfires, and then we'll get some more inflation stuff. And then we'll keep going from there.
Winds are certainly pretty strong, Steve.
And that's why we're here, David. We're hearing about a particularly dangerous situation. That is the official designation from the National Weather Service. It's meant to be a particular elevation from the normal red flag winds that we normally have on the ground. It's even worse than that. The last 3 times we've had this designation, it has led to serious property damage, including some of the worst fires in California history, in the history of this country. Meanwhile, there's great worry that as this goes down to lower elevations, and we're already seeing wind gusts 60, 70 miles an hour in some of the canyons and mountaintops. As this comes down, it could start new fires. In fact, overnight, firefighters doing their best to battle some of those brush fires that we've seen sort of in the area. But the real worry is that the major fires that we've had, the Palisades fire, now 14% contained, the Eaton fire, now 33% contained. If this wind picks up a pocket of embers, it could easily move the front of the fire to somewhere new, causing a whole lot more of a mess here. There's also the possibility of electric shutdowns for several thousand customers in the area. If the winds get too severe, they want to limit the fire danger, but we are in severe fire danger right now. The National Weather Service calling it as bad as it gets. Meanwhile, the investigation into the fires continues. The ATF looking at the Palisades fire as the possibility of what they're describing as a human start, but still very early on. Right now, they're keeping those scenes locked down from people who are looking to just pick up the pieces of their lives. But with this wind event and how particularly dangerous it is, those zones are still off limits as investigators and firefighters continue to do their work. Carl, send it back to you.
A difficult calculus right now for business.
Again, a lot of money is going to have to be allocated to what's going on in California. And, some estimates are saying it's well north of 200 billion in terms of the losses that exist currently right now based on the fires. So that is going to be an ongoing story. It's obviously going to have some inflation impacts long term, but definitely we're going to have to see how California ends up trying to recover from this. We are getting a little bit of a 1030 slam, little bit right here. Stuff is still pretty green, but it is down about 0.5 to 1% from where it was just 20 minutes ago. So if I had Palantir, even MSTR 339, if we can survive the 1030 slam and we continue to be green throughout the rest of it, like if we end green today, I think it's pretty bullish going into CPI. If we somehow go red towards the end of the day, that would be the market saying we don't care about PPI. We still think this 10 years is an issue. And then if CPI is not as good, then basically today becomes a fake pump. but tomorrow's going to determine that. Along with the bank earnings tomorrow. I mean, I think the banks are going to crush it. And because I think the market's also pumping a little bit because they know the banks are going to crush it. There's no reason for Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs to have a bad earnings tomorrow. There's just no reason. And if there is no reason for that, then I think that should still be relatively bullish. Robinhood right here, 42.89, just below that 43.20 level that it was just at. Yeah, for those asking about Grab, it's the Dixie, guys. The Dixie's up, or at least it's not going down as much as it needs to. And that's causing some pain as well right here. Oh, what does the poll say? So the poll said 50 is the bottom. 34% of you think 50 is the bottom. 34% of you say 50 is the bottom. Meta tanking again, TikTok fear. Dude, I really do think there's some legitimacy to that Bloomberg headline. Even if it's not being sold to Elon, I don't think TikTok lets them lose 50 billion in a day. Like, I don't know. I feel like we're gonna have to see. Is my stream freezing? Is it freezing for you guys? Oh, no, you guys can still hear me, but my own personal computer is freezing a little bit. All right, hold on. Let me cancel some of this stuff. Yeah, it's like stuck on Weeble. Oh, there it is. There it is. We're good. We're good. Okay. So kind of laggy. Yeah, let me close off. I have too many tabs open. Let me get rid of some of this stuff. Fear and greed is at 29. We were at extreme fear. Now we're at regular fear, which is not too bad. Let's get that inflation update from BMO and see what they have to say about PPI.
BMO Capital Markets Chief Investment Strategist joins us. His target for year-end 6,700. Brian, great to see you. To what degree are any of these inflation prints a concern for you right now?
No concern, Carl. Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. You know, we continue to think that investors are way too focused on the two M's, that being momentum and macro. I think we've entered the golden age of stock picking. We've been saying this for a while. We think so many investors remain so focused on the Fed funds futures now. You have strategists out there saying the Fed's not going to cut it all this year. I think we need to all settle down and just let stocks do their work. I mean, what we're in is an environment, quite frankly, that normalization has begun. We've been talking about it for 2 years, that we're entering into this period, Carl, where we have high single-digit, low double-digit performance, high single-digit, low double-digit earnings growth, a trading range for the 10-year Treasury, which is exactly what's occurring. We're so focused, man, on this 5% number, 4.8% number. How about like a range of 100 basis points, which is pretty normal over the last 70 years in terms of the 10-year Treasury? And then lastly, in terms of valuation, valuation in general is at the higher end. We know that. But if you take a look at a high teens, low 20s multiple over the last 30 years, that's actually quite normal, especially given the growth environment. So I think everybody needs to focus less on momentum, less on macro, and more on bottoms up stock.
So wait, Brian, 22 times, isn't that roughly where we are? That's more normal than we might otherwise think. Feels
yeah, it's more normal. Well, no, I mean, again,
bro, this guy sounds more bullish than Tom Lee. I mean, talk about bullish.
David, good morning, by the way. If you take a look at the last 50 to 70 years, it actually is quite normal. Especially if you take out some of the other extreme areas, like if you take out the 90s, which you and I lived through, or you take out the 50s, 40s, and 50s. And so, again, you have to take a look at things from a longer term perspective. By the way, BMO has learned that the markets actually were around before 2008. BMO's learned that the markets have been around before 2020. We seem to have this very, very short-term focus on the market. Now, all we remember is actually what happened yesterday. I think this is time for perspective. It's time for kind of longer-term holding periods in terms of stocks. And I think we're very blessed because we have the opportunity to run money for BMO Wealth Management on the side from our institutional exposure. And we had amazing performance last year. Why? Because we held on to our stock picks and we held to our guns.
Are you worried much about this school of thought that looks at negative equity risk premium, where you're getting more for treasuries than you are on S&P earnings for the long-term return of equities?
I am, Carl, and it's a wonderful point because I do think from an equity risk premium, the stocks don't look as expensive, let's say, as most people think, number one. Number two, I do believe that over the next 10 years, the majority of returns from fixed income is actually be coming from yield. If you take two steps back and look at the bond market, the last 40 years, the majority of returns from the bond market have come from price performance, not yield. I believe that in this stock picking environment where you have high single digit, low double digit performance, in the midst of this 25-year secular bull market that we've been talking about since 2010, bonds in a 60-40 environment, actually from an asset allocation basis, make a lot of sense. Bottom line, you still want to be in U.S. assets, whether or not they're stocks, especially a broadly distributed stock market, large, mid, and small growth and value, but also shorter term treasuries with respect to the 10-year.
That multiple gets pushed higher as a result of obviously a handful of stocks that trade at much higher multiples, being the mega caps largely, Brian. Now, they may deserve it because they have higher growth rates, but I'm curious as to how you sort of view that bifurcation that we've been talking about now for years.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think, number one, you get what you pay for, especially given the technology earnings. We've been saying for 10 years that the big cap technology companies, the ones that you're on screen right now, are really the new consumer staples. I'm not saying this is a rational exuberance like Greenspan warned about in 1997, 98. What we're saying for tech is own these as your core holdings and then own the barbell on the side of owning smaller cap tech, let's call it Palantir and Oracle and AMD. With respect to the overall market, though, we think earnings projections are too low, principally because one of the biggest parts of the market, David, financials, really since the credit crisis, have been massively underappreciated, massively underanalyzed, quite frankly, analyzed by a bunch of analysts that are still very, very, very negative. And we think from a bottoms-up basis, financials are going to be the quote-unquote pick to click, as earnings are way too low, analysts are way too negative, and we see the massive deregulation, which we think is going to happen in the next few years, really be a huge tailwind that nobody's talking about.
We're going to get a lot more information on that front in the morning, Brian. I'm sure we'll talk in the coming days. Thanks for kicking off the hour. Good to see you, Brian Belsky.
Thanks so much.
Look, if I had to sum up his thesis right there, his thesis is forget the macro, look at earnings growth, and look at tech companies and what they're doing. And you can't really argue that. It's hard to argue that, given over the next decade, or at least over the next 5 years, we think there's going to be a lot of transformational technology that's becoming very, very real. Palantir 66.58 up 2.4%. Hood holding on to that 43 level, which is very nice to see. A close above 43 would be amazing for Hood. Tesla 409, Amazon 219, Oracle 156, Rivian 1367. SoFi got upgraded officially. I think I have the report on that, or I have a little bit of the data from that. Yeah, so Citi analysts reiterated his buy on SoFi, raised from 1250 to 18, and he cited the stable macro backdrop, a reduced regulatory burden, and potential for future acquisitions and steadier growth profiles. Those are the 4 reasons why SoFi got an upgrade today, up 4.4%. Obviously PPI probably helped as well, but that is the upgrade we got for SoFi. A little bit of a 1030 slam as well. We got a little bit of red, even though, most of the record's still relatively green, and any of the red is about 0.5 to 1% down. Archer is giving up some of its gains. It was up 6%. Now it's up 1%. Let me check the spec names, how they're doing. Yeah, they're giving up a decent amount. So Rigetti was up 30%. Now it's up 14. D-Wave was up 20%. Now it's up 9. Archer was up 6. Now it's up 1. Soundhound was up 4. Now it's up 1. Oaklow's up 2. GameStop just went red. MSTR was up 5. Now it's up 3. And then Kohler's up 12. Overall, still a pretty good day for the spec names. IONQ just went red. But they are giving back some of those gains. Citi upgraded SoFi. Citi upgraded SoFi. Are you bullish for Tesla's earnings? I am relatively bullish on the idea that energy will outperform. and that margins would be stable, if not a little bit better. And margins might take a little bit of a hit because of all the incentives they gave. But the real thing I'm curious about, it has nothing to do with the numbers. I just want to know, are they going to actually say, hey, the new $30,000 car is going to go live in 5 months or whatever, right? Because they said H1 2025. So that means they have until June to launch that thing. That's, I think, the only thing that matters, to be honest. The numbers are whatever. The numbers, they should be good. Maybe they'll be slightly off because the delivery is missed by 10,000 cars, but energy should make up for a little bit of it. I think the big thing is, does Elon say, yeah, we're ready to put out a new $30,000 car? And if they delay it, and if they, and they're going to have to be pretty explicit, because they've been very explicit the past 2 quarters in the earnings slide deck. They said H1 2025. If that timeline changes, that's where I think it could get volatile. But I don't know, dude. If it doesn't change, then yeah, we have a brand new car that's competitive with a Honda Civic and a Toyota Corolla. That's an EV. I mean, I think a lot of people will get really excited to buy a car like that. And it's not going to be as expensive as a Model Y or a Model 3. So theoretically, interest rates might not hurt people's ability to buy it as much. Will the $30,000 car have FSD? I think it would have to. It would have to. Every Tesla car would have to have FSD. So, and they, the FSD is where they would make their margins. So they could lose money on that, because right now it costs Tesla $31,700. I believe that's pretty accurate to the exact price of their cost of goods to make a car. If they're selling it for $30,000, hopefully it costs them less than that. But let's say it costs them more than that. If they're willing to lose money on it because they know FSD is prime time and people are going to pay $8,000 to upgrade, and the $8,000 is like 90% margins because it's literally lines of code, that's really bullish. But that's what I'm looking at for earnings. You're correct. Corollas aren't cheap anymore, dude. I told you guys, I was at the Honda dealership a month ago, and the Honda Civic, dude, a new Honda Civic is $34,000. That was the price tag that was there. That was the MSRP. Now, you could probably negotiate it down or whatever, but still, when I bought a Honda Civic, it was $21,000 in 2019. Like $34,000, you might as well go buy a Tesla at that point. Like, you pay another 10 grand and actually get a really, really good car. Rivian right here up 1%. So in general, this would be very competitive with the consumer models that are out there. What do you guys think they're going to call it, though? I've heard Model Q, Model Z. They've got to, I think it was 5 months ago, I found out that the Model S, Model 3, the Model X, the Model Y, all of that spelled out sexy. I literally found that out, I think in September, and I made a tweet about it, and everyone was like, how did you not know that? I was like, dude, I didn't know that. I was like, oh, sexy. That's kind of cool. That's kind of dope. So I feel like they've got to name it something that's in line with that. What if they call it 69? Dude, that'd be crazy. That'd be hilarious. I really didn't know that. And I was like, what? Model Q? That's the rumor that people have been saying as well. Model G for grinder. That'd be funny. Does Grab go down 4%? It all depends on the dollar. The dollar goes down or the dollar goes up, then it will go down. Robin, it's still holding 43, dude. Grab's at 437, Tesla 407, then Palantir 67 right now. Dogecar. That would also be funny. That would also be pretty funny. It would, dude. It would be funny if they have 2 models. One is the Model 6, one is the Model 9. Dude, this is why I love Elon. Elon's just he's just like a troll. He's just literally he's naming his cars to spell something that sounds cool. He just has fun, bro. He's the richest guy in the world, the biggest innovator, and he has fun. He just jokes around with a lot of this stuff. I know a lot of people don't love the political side of him. I get it. But for the far majority of his life, he wasn't political. He wasn't really this outspoken. I mean, really, this happened in the past 2 years. But Elon, the innovator, is just someone who's so fun to just see him in his zone. Okay, we got to talk about this Bil Ackman thing as well. Fannie and Freddie are pumping. Bil Ackman's trying to take a company private, and the company is called HHH. I've never heard of the company. I've been looking into it over the past couple of days, but he wants to take them public or private for a reason. And there was a Financial Times piece that came out. Howard Hughes, the Financial Times piece came out yesterday saying that Bil Ackman, the headline was Bil Ackman wants to be the, and these types of moves potentially are getting him closer to trying to be like that.
Some news out this morning from Bil Ackman and his Pershing Square Holdings Group. It's a complicated transaction, but try to give you some top line information about what's happening here. He is acquiring the Howard Hughes Holdings Company. This is a business that they've owned a large stake in for a very long time. This has been an underperformer in truth, but they're buying at a big premium. We'll talk about that premium in just a second. But perhaps the larger story here is that this acquisition that effectively Bil Ackman is going to attempt to make now would become a permanent capital vehicle for Pershing Square, and to some degree it now puts Pershing Square in the business of buying controlling stakes in operating businesses, so much so that the way Bil Ackman is now describing this transaction is to compare this deal with the first deal that Warren Buffett ever made.
I was going to say, is this his way of doing it?
And says, with apologies to Mr. Buffett, HHH, which would be this new holding company, would become a modern day Berkshire Hathaway that would acquire controlling interests in operating companies. So there would be effectively Pershing Square up here. There would be all of the different funds, and you could almost consider this another subsidiary of it. Now, you'll remember that Pershing Square sought to go public in an IPO earlier this year. That was temporarily withdrawn, but my understanding is that they could decide to go public again in the future. So this is sort of an initial step in this sort of permanent capital effort for Bil Ackman's Pershing Square. In terms of this,
he would go public even after doing this, or this would be the vehicle for?
No. So this will remain a public vehicle, but then, and that's why it's complicated. And we should talk about how this deal is going to go. But there could be the additional deal where Pershing Square, the holding company at the top, still goes public. And so we would have this permanent capital feature while this happens. I know it's complicated, and that's why I said bear with us as we walk through this. Pershing Square, we should say that Bil Ackman and their team own 44% of Pershing Square. In terms of this deal itself, Howard Hughes, which, as I said, has been an underperformer and, in fact, has not delivered dividends over the years. You know, there has been an expectation that it would. Part of his bet on this company is that he believes in the next couple of years it's going to start producing lots of cash. And that would obviously be a requirement, if you will, for it to be a successful venture to actually produce enough cash to become a sort of, not going to be an insurance company, of course, but if you could actually create a lot of EBITDA off the business, then you could go take that money and start buying lots of other businesses. In terms of this transaction itself, though, what you're looking at is if you are a shareholder of Howard Hughes today, you will have the option effectively of cashing out completely, or you'll have the option of rolling in, which is what they're going to be doing. So you're going to be able to effectively roll into this transaction, which then would be controlled by Bil Ackman. Because
they purchase a majority share, or is there a new share class that's being like a voting class?
They're going to be purchasing a majority share in the company. Mm-hmm. You could effectively think of it in a very unique way, almost as a take private, even though it's sort of a take private public. Right. It'll be, here's how it'll work. The consideration in cash is $85 per share. You're looking at it right now at $81.25, which represents a 38.3% unaffected premium before the news and a premium of 18% to the closing price on Friday. They're saying that because there had been some speculation about what would happen to this business. But you're also allowed, effectively, if you want to roll in the way they are, to take a combination of cash and stock. And so there are going to be some shareholders that may say, I want to go on the ride with Bil Ackman, in which case you can play around.
But you can't pledge your whole shares to that because they need to buy a majority of the shares to take over.
Well, it gets complicated because there's two ways to do this. And that's why I said we're going to probably have to spend some time going through this. Yeah. You need enough shareholders to roll in to make this all work. If it's all cash, that obviously creates a new kind of challenge because I don't believe that they have enough cash. The math is $1.5 billion total cash proceeds from Pershing Square and a new bond that's going to finance some of this, divided by $85 per share. So that's going to be the money that's going to be available on a cash basis if the shareholders vote for it. Of course, this will require a vote as well, and so we're going to have to get into some of this. I'm sorry, and I apologize because it is super, super complicated.
So it's a 3 point.
Yeah, this is definitely a bit more complicated, but it looks like Howard Hughes Holdings, which is a real estate company, is what Ackman wants to take private. Now, the more interesting thing to me here, besides the actual acquisition here, is his Warren Buffett arc that he's going on, which is, Buffett has done this time and time again, is take a company and figure out a way to take it private and then rebuild the company. So the headline from the Financial Times I'm looking at right now, Bil Ackman says he wants to build a modern Berkshire Hathaway, which, if that's the case, then you take underperformers that are in your portfolio like Howard Hughes and you bring them in-house and you actually own the company, just like Warren Buffett has done with many companies, most notably with Geico. So I don't know. That's interesting. Look, Bil Ackman, how old is Bil Ackman? I think he's in his 50s, right? Bil Ackman age. He's 58. Okay, so he's almost 60. So he probably is going to be doing this for the next 30 years. He's not the guy I think who's going to sit on a beach and retire. I think he likes being a fund manager. I think he likes having the spotlight on him. So if he's going to be doing this for the next 30 years, he's already built up enough of a reputation, enough of a legacy. Maybe this is the part of his career where he just says, we're not going to invest in the public equity anymore. We're going to take them, put them under our wing, do whatever we want with the company, new management, leadership, CEO, yada, yada, and then build out a holding company in that way. Maybe that is how the job gets done. Yeah, Berkshire owns Dairy Queen. There's a good chart about this. Berkshire-owned companies. They own a bunch of names. Yeah, so Duracell, the battery, Geico, that's the most famous one that people know about. Fruit of the Loom, underwear, all that stuff. Dairy Queen. Well, they don't own American Express, but they have a decent amount of it. But there's so many different names that they actually own themselves. Maybe Ackman's trying to go that route. Yeah, this headline I just saw literally 2 seconds ago. Meta is firing 5% of their lowest performing workforce. So Zucks is officially saying we are done with this idea of having underperformers. They're getting rid of DEI. They are transitioning the company's culture. And as per Bloomberg, Meta is planning to cut 5% of their lowest performers. I mean, look, it seems like Zucks is completely pivoting the company. Completely. The thing about these tech companies is that there are so many employees that perform, but they're not adding that much incremental value to the business. And the tech companies have so much money that they're able to hoard the talent and keep paying for it. But you definitely do have low performers that really don't do much. And I'm sure everyone's seen the day in the life of a TikTok Meta product manager that realistically does nothing, and they're getting paid $250,000. And it's just like, all right, so I think Meta's wondering, do we need these people? Or the other angle here is AI. Potentially Zucks is saying, hey, AI is making our top people that much better. And if we're paying for AI services or developing our own AI services, then we need to save costs somewhere. And that means we have to get rid of the lowest performers here. Zuck has pivoted from class clown to rock star. He has definitely taken a pivot. He has definitely taken a pivot here. I mean, 2022, they fired literally, I think it was 17,000 people. They just completely slashed the company. And they said, we are not moving forward with this. Still don't know what's up with Meta today. Don't know why it's down. I think it has to be because of this TikTok thing not getting banned. But it looks like that's why it's down 2.52%. Meta pumped to 630 last Friday too. So it is a bit of a dip from there. But it pumped on the TikTok news. But if TikTok's not getting banned, then it makes sense that it's coming back down. NVIDIA right here, 131. So NVIDIA actually is falling, getting very close back to the 130s. What do you guys think? Is NVIDIA a buy at 130? What do you guys think? Let me do a poll on that. How many people think NVIDIA is legit a buy at 130? How many people actually think that? Like, would you sell puts on NVIDIA at 120? Like, or the better question is, what is your personal price target where you say, all right, let's say you have 20,000 lying around. Like, when do you, if you're interested in NVIDIA, when do you say, all right, I'm buying NVIDIA? Do you put 10,000 at 125, 10,000 at 115, 20,000 all at 130? 74% of you say yes, it's a buy at 130. And we have some price targets in the chat are closer into the 115s. Amit, what's your price target for Hood? I think 50 by the end of the year is very possible. Again, I know people may say that's low, but I'm assuming the macro is not as amazing as it was in 2024. I think they could be well beyond 50, but I also think they could, dip to 35, and it's a slow ride into the 50s, into the 45s if they take a dip. It really is contingent on the macro, but overall, I think their execution is going to be good enough, and any dip that is aggressive is a dip to buy on Hood. The Hood thesis has to get very simple for people that are interested in it. There's a wealth transfer of trillions of dollars that are making their way onto new platforms, and the platforms that have founder-led CEOs that can execute on that opportunity, which Vlad has aggressively shown he knows how to do that last year, those are the platforms that are going to win. And that's why I think the Hood thesis is easy to go long regardless of when you get in. Okay, so most of you guys are saying 120 or lower. That's what I'm looking at in the chat. 120 or lower is what most people are saying. I don't hate that either. The lowest we got to was 126 on Christmas Eve. We got to 129 yesterday. Every analyst on Wall Street has a price target in the 180s. I mean, I think D.A. Davidson is the only one that's at like 140. Everybody else is well into the 180s. Or at least 175s. By the way, Loop Capital, who's super bullish on NVIDIA, they put a price target today about AMD with a buy rating, and they said 175. So Loop Capital thinks AMD is going much higher from here. Yeah, I don't know. Let me see the put premiums on NVIDIA 120. How good are they? NVIDIA 120. Let's do a month out. 262, so that would be about 2%. It's not horrible. It's not crazy. You could probably get about 3% on 125. It's not a horrible place. Chris says, so today really was a bull trap. Chris, why are you thinking it's, because NVIDIA's going down? That's why it's a bull trap. Yeah, Tesla. Oh boy. This is why it's so emotional, bro. Oh my gosh. Tesla is $2 away from going red, folks. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Bitcoin down from 97. SoFi down from 1480. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Every day it's the same story, bro. Every freaking day. Tesla now $1 away from going red. Holy crap, dude. Trappy. In the words of Jason, trappy. Did CPI leak? That's so funny. PPI leaked, we're going up. CPI leaks, we're going down. Oh my gosh. You guys know we put ourselves through all the pain of following the markets every single day. And now granted, we put ourselves through that pain because you get years like 2024 where things are, life-changing amounts of returns. But nonetheless, this is cruel. Like, all your emotions go up. You get excited. You leave at freaking 10:30. You get a little bit more of a nicer breakfast. You're like, you know what? I'm up 20,000 today. I can afford a little bit more on breakfast. You come back by the afternoon. You're like, why did I just spend that money? I'm down 25,000. Like, every day, every single day we deal with it. DJ Tino, thank you for the $5 super chat. What does Amit's channel have in common with a strip club? It has a lot of polls. That's a joke I should have thought of. So I'm happy you sent in a super chat, but I feel like I should have thought of that joke. That was a good one. That was not a bad one. Hood is still up 7%. Yeah, but how much can it keep? If this really is a little bit of a bull trap, do we keep this 7% or does it go away? Tesla holding on by a thread to 400. AMD definitively down. NVIDIA down 2%. Uber's down. Grab has been getting hit all day. It's a little bit higher from where it was at the lows, but still 438 down 2.6. S&P just went red. There you go. There you go. S&P just went red. Maybe in the last 10 minutes of the day, the CPI comes out, the leak comes out, and then we rally again. But algorithms are coming in right now. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Admit, you got to add the gotcha bitch to the soundboard. Yeah, it's a good one, dude. The Dave Chappelle one, right? That's a good one. Got that. Yo, every time we get rug pulled, we got to have that sound. I could add it right now, to be honest. I could add it right now. I actually, dude, I learned so much tech over the weekend. I learned so much about how to do this. Took me a good 5 hours, but I figured it out. And I got it ready. Dude, the feeling of like when you figure something out that's hard, and I know it might sound stupid, like figuring out how to put sounds in a soundboard, but it was hard, bro. I had to literally, because the Mac, like the StreamYard, I'm using a third-party software to connect with StreamYard. So I had to download a whole new thing. I had to pay $100 for some new software, get that connected into StreamYard, but then I had to get it connected with my Mac because my Mac doesn't allow for certain permissions based on these third-party software. So I had to like reboot the Mac and like make sure it allows it to be connected. Then I had to actually get it to sync with the mic, which is not necessarily the easiest thing to do on StreamYard. And then finally, by the end of Saturday night, I was like, oh shit, like it works. And like you go through so many attempts, it's not working. And then you finally press the button and I can hear the clapping. I'm like, oh crap. Like I figured it out. So it was really nice to actually like get something done. It just reminds you, like sometimes you put your mind to something and it's in a territory where you're not, the best at, but then you figure it out. And it reminds you how cool humans are, that we can actually put our mind to something and figure shit out. And then you think about something like Elon, getting fucking rockets into space. I mean, the amount of pride he must feel after figuring it out after so much failure. It's just so commendable. We didn't talk about Applied Digital either today. They're up 11%. They were up 20%. They got some acquisition stuff, or they got an investment, I think. This is another semiconductor play that NVIDIA invested in a while ago. But they got $5 billion, if I'm not wrong, APLD from, Macquarie is investing $5 billion in Applied Digitals to build up AI data centers. I don't know what Macquarie is. That might be a private equity firm. I could be wrong about that. But they are investing up to $5 billion in Applied Digital. So that shot them up 25% in pre-markets. Now they're up 10%, but not bad for APLD. Not bad for that. I got caught up in the quantum names. My account doubled and then came back to earth. Will probably take most of the year to get back to my early January highs. Frustrating. Yeah, I mean, does Regretti get back to $18 as easily? I don't know. Oh, wait, hold on. If the market's turning red, let's go to quantum. Is that getting hit? It's losing steam. It's not necessarily getting hit, but it's losing steam. They're still up. They're still green, but they're not up as much as they were. If these go red, then we definitely know the market's going a bit more risk off here. It's an Aussie firm. They're a bank in Australia. Macquarie. Of course I said the name wrong. Of course I said the name wrong. Well, $5 billion into APLD. So that's not bad for them. Mag 7, Apple's flat, Microsoft's down, Meta's down, Google's down, Amazon's up a little bit, NVIDIA 1.5, Tesla holding on to 405. It's not letting go of that yet. It's still up 1%, but it's not the 422 that it was at this morning. Had a meeting and came back to see the market red. What happened? Dude, we were just talking about this, that you can see the market green in the morning and then randomly you leave. Like that's what Derek told me. Derek bought those calls on Tesla. He was up like 150,000 by the end of the day, but he bought them in the morning when Tesla was at 380 or 385. I think he bought them at, so not the absolute bottom, but he didn't look at it the whole day. And then on my market close, he checked them, and Tesla was pumping to like 403, and then it went to like 415 after hours. So this morning, if he sold them at 422, he would have been up like 200 grand. But if he's still holding them, it's probably not up as much now. So emotional, not only with the market, but definitely with Tesla. Being in the UK, nothing is really going to happen until the dollar drops. Well, this Chris posted about this yesterday on Twitter. For those that are traveling, I mean, a strong dollar has got to be great for a lot of those that are traveling. People, I mean, a couch investor was telling me in Belgium, he's basically getting everything half off because of the strong dollar. So that is definitely benefiting to some extent as well. All right, so let me ask you guys a question, and based on what you guys say, we'll either end the stream here or we'll watch like maybe 20 minutes of it. Pete Hegseth is testifying at the Senate confirmation hearing to be the defense secretary. We can watch like 20 minutes and end the stream, or we can end it here. It's up to you guys. And if you don't want to watch it, obviously you guys can leave. That could be the end of the stream right there. But no other crazy news in terms of the market. 3:45. We'll have Jason on today. We'll have a lot of technicals to go through because a lot of stocks have changed. But outside of that, nothing too crazy. Jamal, thanks for the $5 super chat. How does everyone feel about Take-Two 2026 leaps in anticipation of GTA 6 releasing late 2025? This is a good question. This is actually a really good question. I don't know enough about GTA other than it's a worldwide phenomena and everyone loves the game. I used to play the game. I played Vice City when I was younger. I don't know how much that game itself is going to be catalyst for Take-Two. Like, that's going to be a big game, but is that going to be the game that, you know, the stock's at 180 right now. Like, does that take them to 250 off that game alone? I don't know. Year to date, it's down 2%. Over the past year, it's up 11%. So it definitely underperformed the market last year, $31 billion market cap. I don't know if GTA actually makes it happen. Let's watch. All right, here we go. If you guys don't want to watch, thank you for being here. I'll be back on the market close. And thank you for joining the market open. For those that do want to watch, we'll do like 20 minutes of this, nothing too crazy. This is probably going to go on for the next few hours, but we'll at least get a feel of how these senators are thinking of this guy. All right, here we go. Let's get into it. Some of you guys are bullish on the GTA link. I guess we'll do more research on that. Maybe there is an opportunity there to look deeper into.
Briefing immediately about how it would impact the spectrum if it were to allow other companies or it to be
rest assured,
China
would love to have our ability to use that part of the spectrum restricted. They would love that.
Absolutely right. And so I will go in with eyes only toward ensuring we have the capabilities we need and there's no disruption when I take that brief.
Thank you. In your advanced policy questions, you recognize a cooperative approach by China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea to undermine U.S. influence around the world. As you point out, aggression by any one actor would be an opportunity for others to engage the U.S. on multiple fronts along the continuum of the conflict. As we discussed in my office, neither of us wants to send our troops into a fair fight. We want to make sure that they have every advantage that the United States can give them, and that requires resources and reforms. Given the growing potential of a multi-theater conflict involving near-peer adversaries, what steps would you take to prepare the Department of Defense to simultaneously execute and sustain operations across multiple regions while maintaining readiness and deterrence globally? And I just have to make note, and I want to make it clear, we have language in this year's fiscal year 2025 National Defense Authorization Act calling for a review of the department's operational plans. And I just want to make sure that you're aware of that, and that we will have, if we have a fight with one, chances are very good that we're going to have two battles or two different battlegrounds at the same time.
Senator, which is why I believe our country's incredibly fortunate to have a new commander-in-chief in Donald Trump, who through the strategic approach he has taken with allies and against foes has prevented wars and is determined to do the same. That's our chief job, is deter and prevent wars. My job, should I be confirmed at the Secretary of Defense, is to ensure we have the right prioritization of assets and strategy, and then the tools in the toolbox necessary, the pointiest possible spear for President Trump to wield if necessary as the last resort. So President Trump at the helm, I think, will go a long way in making sure our enemies know there's a new sheriff in town.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let's get back to the first question he answered as well. So let me rewind a little bit to the beginning of it, and then we'll keep going from there as well.
Hearings with regard to secretaries of defense, not only Secretary Austin, but Secretary.
Reminiscent of your specific comment, states, and I quote, "With the incoming administration looking to remove disloyal, corrupt, traitorous, liberal officers such as yourself, we will certainly be putting your name into the list of those personnel to be removed. We know you support the woke DEI policies and will ensure you never again influence anyone in the future. You and the redacted spouse's name will be lucky if you're able to collect your military requirement," end quote. Now, I want to remind everyone that these policies that are being referred to date back decades, to the 1940s and 50s with respect to racial discrimination particularly, and administrations of both parties, including the Trump administration and their first party, caused those policies to be enforced. Mr. Hegseth, are you aware of these emails being sent to officers?
Senator, you mentioned the word accountability, which is something we have not had for the last 4 years.
Are you aware of these messages being sent to officers?
Certainly, I'm not aware of that. It's not one of my efforts, but there's been no accountability for the disaster of the withdrawal in Afghanistan. And that's precisely why we're here today.
Excuse me.
Is that leadership has been unwilling to take accountability. It's the time to restore that to our most senior ranks.
You've written publicly that DI policy is a distraction and have military personnel walking on eggshells. Do you believe that emails like that are essentially threatening both a serving officer and a spouse and claiming that they'll lose their pension will have a distraction and detract from the lethality?
Senator, you mentioned the 40s and 50s, and you're precisely right. The military was a forerunner in courageous racial integration in ways no other institutions were willing to do. I served with men and women of all backgrounds because of the courage of people decades and decades ago. Incredibly important. However, the DEI policies of today are not the same as what happened back then. They're dividing troops inside formations, causing commanders to walk on eggshells, not putting meritocracy first. That's the indictment that's made by those serving right now.
Excuse me.
And why we're having this conversation.
All of your public comments don't talk about meritocracy. They talk about liberal democratic efforts that are destroying the military, that those people are our enemies. That's not meritocracy. That's a political view. And your goal, as I see emerging, is to politicize the military in favor of your particular positions, which you've outlined extensively, which would be the worst blow to the professionalism of the United States military and would undercut readiness, undercut retention, because I can see officers receiving these emails beginning to wonder very seriously if they should continue. Let me change subject for a moment here. You've been instrumental in securing pardons for several convicted war criminals. In at least 2 of these cases, the military personnel who served in combat with these convicted service members were not supportive of the pardons. They did their duty as soldiers to report war crimes. Your definition of lethality seems to embrace those people who do commit war crimes, rather than those who stand up and say, this is not right. So what's the response to your service members who personally witnessed these and courageously reported them to their superiors?
Senator, as someone who's led men in combat directly and had to make very difficult decisions, I've thought very deeply about the balance between legality and lethality, ensuring that the men and women on the front lines have the opportunity to destroy with and close the enemy, and that lawyers aren't the ones getting in the way. I'm not talking about disavowing the laws of war or the Geneva Conventions or the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Sir, I'm talking about restrictive rules of engagement that these men and women behind me understand they've lived with on the battlefield, which has made it more difficult to defeat our enemies. In many of the cases you're talking about in particular, sir, there was evidence withheld, there was prosecutorial misconduct, and as someone who looks case by case and defaults to the warfighter, to the men and women with dust on their boots, not the second guessers in air-conditioned offices in Washington, D.C.
Excuse me.
I look case by case and was proud to work with President Trump to understand those cases and ensure that our warriors are always looked out for.
Those cases were adjudicated by who? People in Washington or fellow non-commissioned officers who had also served, sacrificed, and believed in the ethic of the military? Who were the court martial?
Senator, in multiple cases, they were actually acquitted, but
some
charges
cases,
lingered.
yes,
Regardless of where those
some were
convening
convicted.
authorities were, yes, sir.
Some were, but others were convicted, and you asked for pardon. That's the only reason you asked for pardon, because they were convicted. But the other factor, too, is you've already disparaged in writing the Geneva Convention, the rules of law, all of these things. How will you be able to effectively lead a military in which one of the principal elements is discipline, respect for lawful authority? You have made statements to your platoon after being briefed by a JAG officer. Well, by the way, would you explain what a JAG off is?
I don't think I need to, sir.
Why not?
Because the men and women watching understand.
Well, perhaps some of my colleagues don't understand.
It would be a JAG officer who puts his or her own priorities in front of the warfighters. Their promotions, their medals, in front of having the backs of those who are making the tough calls on the front lines.
Thank you, Senator Reid.
Interesting.
Thank you, Senator
Thank you
Reid.
very much.
Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Mr. Hegseth, to you and to your family. Thank you for the meeting that we had. We talked about a number of things. First and foremost was that nuclear weapons are foundational to our national defense, and having a safe, effective, and credible nuclear deterrent underpins our alliances, and as you know, it deters our adversaries. Nuclear deterrence has been, and you and I believe, agreed on this, it must continue to be unequivocally the highest priority mission of the Department of Defense. But deterrence only works if our adversaries believe our nuclear forces are effective and credible. All three legs of our triad are undergoing that generational recapitalization programs, and we cannot afford any more delays in those programs. Sir, do you believe and agree with President Trump's 2018 nuclear posture review that preventing adversary nuclear attacks is, quote, the highest priority of the United States?
Senator, yes, I do.
If confirmed, will you commit to supporting all three legs of the nuclear triad and to using every tool available to deliver these systems on schedule?
Senator, yes, I do, because ultimately our deterrence, our survival is reliant upon the capability, the perception, and the reality of the capability of our nuclear triad. We have to invest in its modernization for the defense of our nation.
While former secretaries of defense have stated that nuclear deterrence is the highest priority, we haven't really seen that translated into budget requests or using the tools like the Defense Production Act. You've spoken about increasing lethality. You've spoken about getting programs done faster. How would you actually implement a culture change so that we can see these delivery schedules move forward, be rewarded? I can tell you in most every briefing we have, the schedules we're on are too late. So what would you do?
Well, ultimately focused first on the things that are most important, as we have discussed, Senator, the nuclear triad, understanding whether it's the B-21 or the Minuteman to the Sentinel, all aspects of the Columbia class, submarines, ballistic missiles. What are the priorities that need to be focused on and ensure that in those particular cases, you mentioned it, Senator, the Defense Production Act, emergency powers. If we're at a place where our nuclear capabilities are perceived to not be what they are, that is an emergency. And we have an ally in our incoming commander-in-chief in President Donald Trump, who has spoken about these things, understands the power and strength of nuclear deterrence, will not
But
allow them
it's the
to be
existential
deprioritized.
threat. It's the existential threat to this nation. How do you change the culture? It's not just the Production Act that's going to be able to do it. How are you going to move forward faster?
Competition, Senator, is important, critically important. The Death Valley that was talked about, leveraging the innovation of Silicon Valley, which for the first time in generations has shown a willingness, desire, and capability to bring its best technologies to bear at the Pentagon, a Pentagon that has become too insular, tries to block new technologies from coming in. So we have to embrace that, there's some great Office of Strategic Capital, DIU initiatives that provide loans to companies to participate, because you have to invest in the defense industrial base for the longer term projects. We have the capability, the missiles and the munitions, but also to rapidly field emerging technologies that we need on the battlefield right now. So as we learn things, say in the war in Ukraine, those technologies, as we look at threats we're going to face, find ways to rapidly field those using off-the-shelf technologies or standard designs, modular designs. Another easy one, Senator, that became evident in the process is digital designs. The Pentagon often builds entire systems without first using a digital design, which means you build prototypes and then scrap them and start over again. No private sector business could survive doing business
Palantir
that way. So there's a lot of innovation, and I'm going to hire a lot of smart people already have to help with that.
In the 2025 NDAA, it was established to a new position, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear Deterrence, Chemical and Biological Defense Policy and Programs. And that was established so we could cut through a lot of the bureaucratic stovepipes that we see in the office of the Secretary of Defense. If confirmed, will you direct the Department of Defense components to expeditiously implement this reform?
It sounds, I would want to look directly at exactly what that reform is.
It is
I take your word that it's great, Senator. I will review it robustly, and I look forward to implementing.
Okay, thank you. During the first Trump administration, the 2018 Nuclear Posture Review concluded that the U.S. needed to once again develop and deploy a nuclear-armed sea-launched cruise missile known as SLICM to offset significant Russian and Chinese advantages in theater range nuclear capabilities. Since then, Congress, on a strong bipartisan basis, has directed the Navy and the National Nuclear Security Administration to continue this effort. Do you support the SLICM program?
As of right now, Senator, based on what I know, I do. But one of my answers I'll have repeatedly throughout this morning is getting an opportunity to look under the hood, classified material, get an understanding of true capabilities vis-a-vis enemy capabilities. Because what we know right now on the nuclear, Senator, what I know on the nuclear side is that Russia and China are rushing to modernize and build arsenals larger than ours. We need to match threats to capabilities, and the systems we elevate will be tied to whether those capabilities are needed based on the adversaries we face.
Would you ensure that this program is executed according to law?
Absolutely, absolutely, Senator.
What, short here, what is your plan to revitalize the industrial base in this country?
Needs to be real short.
Real short.
Serious investment targeted at systems that we truly need by also incentivizing competition and laser focus from the OSD, from the Office of Secretary of Defense, to all the particular strategic initiatives to revive them. So it's not just one system, it's multiple systems.
You may want to expand on that on the record. At this point, my colleagues, I would ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter organized by a group called Flag Officers for America, which has 120 retired generals and admirals offering their support for Mr. Hegseth's nomination. I ask unanimous consent. Without objection, it is entered into the record. Senator Shaheen.
Good morning, Mr. Hegseth.
Good morning, Senator.
I was pleased when I was contacted on your behalf about meeting before this hearing. I've been on this committee since 2011, and during that time, I voted to confirm 6 nominees to be Secretary of Defense from 3 administrations, 2 Democratic and 1 Republican, the first Trump administration. Every one of those nominees met with me and my Democratic colleagues on this committee before the hearing. So as you can imagine, I was disappointed when no one ever followed up. When we followed up with your office, you were not able to meet. Do you understand that if you're confirmed to be Secretary of Defense, that you will have a responsibility to meet with all members of this committee, not just Republicans?
Senator, I very much appreciate and understand the traditionally bipartisan nature of this committee. Their national defense is not partisan. It should not be about Republicans or Democrats. And so I look forward to working together with you and your colleagues on priorities facing this nation. Yes.
I think we would expect that. And one reason that I wanted to meet with you was because I thought it would be really helpful to better understand your views on women in the military. Because you've made a number of surprising statements about women serving in the military. As recently as November the 7th of 2024 on the Sean Ryan Show, you said, and I quote, "I'm straight up saying that we should not have women in combat roles. It hasn't made us more effective." The quote went on a little longer, but that was the gist of it. That was before you were nominated to be Secretary of Defense. Mr. Hegseth, do you know what percentage of our military is comprised of women?
I believe it's 18 to 20%, Senator.
It's almost 18%. And in fact, DOD's 2023 demographic report indicated that there are more women serving now and there are fewer separations. So they make up a critical part of our military. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, ma'am. Women in our military, as I have said publicly, have and continue to make amazing contributions across all aspects of our battlefield.
Well, you also write in your book, The War on Warriors, with the chapter, The Deadly Obsession with Women Warriors, that, quote, "Not only are women comparatively less effective than men in combat roles, but they are more likely to be objectified by the enemy and their own nation in the moral realms of war." Mr. Hegseth, should we take it to believe that you believe that the 2 women on this committee who have served honorably and with distinction made our military less effective and less capable?
I'm incredibly grateful for the 2 women who've served our military in uniform and including in the Central Intelligence Agency, contributions on the battlefield, indispensable contributions. Senator, I would like to clarify, when I'm talking about that issue, it's not about the capabilities of men and women, it's about standards. And this committee has talked a lot about standards. Standards that we, unfortunately, over time, have seen eroded in certain duty positions, certain schools, certain places, which affects readiness, which is what I care about the most, readiness on the battlefield.
I appreciate that.
And so my comments point time and time again to standards.
Your statements publicly have not been to that effect. After your nomination, you did state to a group of reporters that you, quote, "support all women serving in our military today who do a fantastic job across the globe, including combat." So what I'm confused about, Mr. Hegseth, is which is it? Why should women in our military, if you were the Secretary of Defense, believe that they would have a fair shot and an equal opportunity to rise through the ranks? If on the one hand, you say that women are not competent, they make our military less effective, and on the other hand, you say, oh no, now that I've been nominated to be the Secretary of Defense, I've changed my view on women in the military. What do you have to say to the almost 400,000 women who are serving today about your position on whether they should be capable to rise through the highest ranks of our military?
Senator, I would say I would be honored to have the opportunity to serve alongside you, shoulder to shoulder, men and women, black, white, all backgrounds, with a shared purpose. Our differences are not what define us. Our unity and our shared purpose is what define us, and you will be treated fairly and with dignity, honor, and respect, just like every man and woman in uniform, just like the men and women that I've worked with in my veterans organizations, to include when I was a headquarters and headquarters company commander in the Minnesota National Guard.
Well, I appreciate your 11th hour conversion. But Mr. Chairman, for the record, I would like to submit Chapter 5, The Deadly Obsession with Women Warriors, for the record. Mr. Hegseth,
Without objection, it will be submitted. and
are you
accepted.
familiar with the Women, Peace, and Security agenda at the Department of Defense?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
This is a law that was signed during President-elect Trump's first term. It was legislation that I sponsored with Republican Senator Capito of West Virginia. It was co-sponsored by Marco Rubio, the nominee to be the President-elect's Secretary of State. It was led in the House of Representatives by Kristi Noem, the President-elect's nominee to be the Secretary of Homeland Security. It mandates that women be included in all aspects of our national security, including conflict resolution and peace negotiations. And at the Department of Defense, it has been the law for 8 years under both the Trump and Biden administrations. The DoD has incorporated women throughout its decision-making as a result. Every single combatant commander across 2 administrations has told this committee that this law and its implementation at the Department of Defense provides them a strategic advantage operationally. Based on your comments, it appears that the example that you would like to set, not only for women in this country, but for women across the globe, 50% of the world's population, as the prospective nominee to lead the most combat credible military in the entire world, is that women should not have an equal opportunity in our military. So will you commit to preserving the Women, Peace, and Security law at DoD and including in your budget the requisite funding to continue to restore and resource these programs throughout the DoD?
Senator, I will commit to reviewing that program and ensuring it aligns with America First national security priorities, meritocracy, lethality, and readiness. And if it advances American interests, it's something we would advance. If it doesn't, it's something we would look at.
Since former President Trump signed the law, I hope that he agrees with you.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. At this point, I would ask unanimous consent to enter into the record 5 letters of support from female service members and combat veterans who support Mr. Hegseth's nomination. These women represent diverse viewpoints, from a retired colonel with over 25 years of service to an active duty Navy surface warfare commander to a senior airman. They support Mr. Hegseth and comment on his focus on merit, warfighting readiness, military training status, and the warrior ethos. So without objection, it will be entered into the record. And now I'm honored to recognize Senator Cotton for 7 minutes.
Mr. Hegseth, let's continue on this line of questioning about what's sometimes referred to as women in combat. I think that phrase is something of a misnomer. Many members of this committee have served in combat in the last 25 years, to include women and men. I'm sure all those men served with women, whether they were military police officers or they were pilots or whether they were intelligence analysts or medics or what have you. You served. I assume you served with women who were on the front lines as well. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And were those women anything other than skilled, brave, and honorable in their service?
They were some of the best soldiers I worked with.
So women have been serving in combat for a long time. Women have even been serving in combat units like infantry battalions for a long time, in roles like medics or mechanics or what have you. So what we're talking about here specifically is women in ground combat roles, in jobs like infantrymen or artillerymen or special forces. Until about 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. Under Secretary Panetta, those roles were opened up to women to serve in. Has President Trump indicated at all that he plans to rescind or alter that guidance?
You're correct to point out, Senator, that these are the decisions that the Commander-in-Chief will have the prerogative to make. He has not indicated to me that he has plans to change whether or not women would have access to these roles. However, I would point out, ensuring that standards are equal and high is of importance to him and great importance to me. Because in those ground combat roles, what is true is that the weight of the ruck on your back doesn't change. The weight of the 155 round that you have to carry doesn't change. The weight of the 240 Bravo machine gun you might have to carry doesn't change. And so whether it's a man or a woman, they have to meet the same high standards. And Senator, in any place where those things have been eroded or in courses, criteria have been changed in order to meet quotas, racial quotas or gender quotas, that is putting a focus on something other than readiness, standards, meritocracy, and lethality. So that's the kind of review I'm talking about, not whether women have access to ground combat.
Okay, so thank you. So you expect no change to that guidance, but as you point out, in these specific jobs, there are irreducible physical demands. We expect our intelligence analysts and our mechanics to be physically fit in the military, but it's different when you're in the infantry or the artillery. You just mentioned a few things. Let me point it out. An artillery shell weighs almost 100 pounds. An Abrams tank round weighs around 50 pounds. The M240 Bravo machine gun with its tripod weighs almost 50 pounds. The average weight of a full kit, ammo, water, commo, body armor for a soldier is over 100 pounds. Nothing you can do can change any of those things, right? That is physical reality.
Go ahead. Yes, Senator. And I would say the requirements to handle those things in a ground combat unit, as far as standards, can look different than those of a medic or a drone pilot. And so it's not that it has to be the same standard throughout, it's standards to maximize efficacy of that particular position.
Let me read a quote here from one Army officer. While it may be difficult for a 120-pound woman to lift or drag 250 pounds, the Army cannot artificially absolve women of that responsibility. It may still exist on the battlefield. The entire purpose of creating a gender-neutral test was to acknowledge the reality that each job has objective physical standards to which all soldiers should be held, regardless of gender. The intent was not to ensure that women and men will have an equal likelihood of meeting those standards. I assume, based on your testimony, you agree with that Army officer?
Absolutely. The standards need to be the same and they need to be high. And they need to be set by the people closest to the problem set, closest to the understanding of what is required by that job. Commanders, commanding officers, and COCOMs and elsewhere who understand the reality of what they face, that's the feedback we should get. That's what should be enshrined and enforced, and no other set of political prerogatives. When I talk about removing politics, ideological or political prerogatives should contribute to those determinations, nothing other than the execution of the mission.
Thank you. For the record, that Army officer was Captain Kristen Griest, the Army's first female infantry officer and one of its first female Ranger School graduates. One final point, you said they need to be objective, gender neutral, and high. That's because the demands are, in fact, very high. The current physical fitness test for the Army has a minimum 2-mile run of 22 miles. Run. And I want the reporter to note that I'm putting run in air quotes because 22 miles at 2 miles is not running. It may be jogging. It's probably walking fast. Let's move on. We've got a big 22 minutes. We've got a big audience here. Many of them seem to be patriotic supporters of you, Mr. Hegseth. Some of them seem to be liberal critics of you. I would note that it's only the liberal critics that have disrupted this hearing. As was my custom during the Biden administration, I want to give you a chance to respond to what they said about you. I think the first one accused you of being a Christian Zionist. I'm not really sure why that is a bad thing. I'm a Christian. I'm a Zionist. Zionism is that the Jewish people deserve a homeland in the ancient Holy Land where they've lived since the dawn of history. Do you consider yourself a Christian Zionist?
Senator, I'm a Christian, and I robustly support the state of Israel and its existential defense, and the way America comes alongside them is a great ally.
Thank you. Because another protester, and I think this one was a member of Code Pink, which, by the way, is a Chinese Communist front group these days, said that you support Israel's war in Gaza. I support Israel's existential war in Gaza. I assume, like me and President Trump, you support that war as well, don't you?
Senator, I do. I support Israel destroying and killing every last member of Hamas.
And the third protester said something about 20 years of genocide. I assume that's our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Do you think our troops are committing genocide in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Senator, I do not. I think our troops, as you know, as so many in this committee know, did the best they could with what they had. The outcomes And tragically, the outcome we saw in Afghanistan under the Biden administration put a stain on that, but it doesn't put a stain on what those men and women did in uniform, as you know full well, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Hegseth.
Thank you, Senator Cotton. At this point, I ask unanimous consent to offer to the record a letter submitted by Omar Abbasi, son of former city council president of Samarra, Iraq, who worked with Mr. Hegseth in Iraq. Without objection, that will be entered. Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Hegseth. I do want to thank you for your service, and I want to thank you for your willingness to serve in this capacity.
Thank you, Senator.
I have many concerns about your record, and particularly your public statements, because they are so hurtful to the men and women who are currently serving in the U.S. military, harmful to morale, harmful to good order and discipline. If you are saying that women shouldn't be serving in the military, and I'm going to read you your quotes, because the quotes themselves are terrible. You will have to change how you see women to do this job well, and I don't know if you are capable of that. So I want to press on these issues that my colleague Jean Shaheen brought up, because she said it so well. So first of all, you answered your questionnaire. Do you believe that any American who wants to serve in their country in the military and can meet objective standards set by the military should be allowed to serve without limitation? You've said yes to that question. But then in all of these other circumstances, you've denigrated active duty service members. We have hundreds of women who are currently in the infantry, lethal members of our military serving in the infantry, but you degrade them. You say, we need moms, but not in the military, especially in combat units. So specific to Senator Cotton's question, because Senator Cotton was giving you layups to differentiate between different types of combat. And specifically, as Secretary, would you take any action to reinstitute the combat arms exclusion for female service members, knowing full well you have hundreds of women doing that job right now? And the standards, your 2-mile run, Tom, is about the Army Combat Fitness Test. It is not the requirements to have an MOS 11 Bravo, which is the infantry. These are the requirements today for people serving in the industry, men and women. They are gender neutral, and they are very difficult to meet. They have not been reduced in any way, and our combat units, our infantry is lethal. So please explain specifically, because you will be in charge of 3 million personnel. It is a big job. And when you make these public statements, and I get you were not Secretary of Defense then, I get you were on TV, I get you were helping veterans, I get it was a different job. But most recently, you said this in November of 2024, knowing full well you might have been named as Secretary of Defense. So please explain these types of statements, because they're brutal and they're mean and they disrespect men and women who are willing to die for this country.
Well, Senator, I appreciate your comments. And I would point out, I have never disparaged women serving in the military. I respect every single female service member that has put on the uniform, past and present. My critiques, Senator, recently and in the past, and from personal experience, have been instances where I've seen standards lowered, and you mentioned 11 Alpha, 11 Bravo, MOS, places in units, and the book that has been referenced multiple times here, The War on Warriors. I spent months talking to active duty service members, men and women, low ranks, high ranks, combat arms and not combat arms. And what each and every one of them told me, and which personal instances have shown me, is that in ways direct, indirect, overt, and subtle, standards have been changed inside infantry training units, ranger school, infantry battalions, to ensure that
Give me one example. Please give me an example. I get you're making these generalized
meet
statements.
Quotas to have a certain number of female infantry officers or infantry enlisted, and that disparages those women.
Commanders do not have to meet quotas for the infantry. Commanders do not have to have a quota for women in the infantry. That does not exist. It does not exist. And your statements are creating the impression that these exist, because they do not. There are not quotas. We want the most lethal force. But I'm telling you, having been here for 15 years, listening to testimony about men and women in combat and the type of operations that were successful in Afghanistan and in Iraq, women were essential for many of those units. When Ranger units went in to find where the terrorists hiding in Afghanistan or in Iraq, if they had a woman in the unit, they could go in, talk to the women in a village, say, where are the terrorists hiding? Where are the weapons hiding? And get crucial information to make sure that we can win that battle. So you cannot denigrate women in general, and your statements do that. We don't want women in the military, especially in combat. What a terrible statement. So please, do not deny that you've made those statements. You have. We take the responsibility of standards very seriously, and we will work with you. I'm equally distressed you would not meet with me before this hearing. We could have covered all of this before you came here, so I could get to the 15 other questions that I want to get to. So women, you have denigrated. You have also denigrated members of the LGBTQ community. Did you know that when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was in place, we lost so many crucial personnel, over 1,000 in mission critical areas. We lost 10% of all our foreign language speakers because of a political policy. You said in your statement, you don't want politics in the DOD. Everything you've said in these public statements is politics. I don't want women. I don't want moms. What's wrong with a mom, by the way? Once you have babies, you therefore are no longer able to be lethal. I mean, you're basically saying women, after they have children, can't ever serve in the military in a combat role. It's a silly thing to say. It's a silly thing to say beneath the position that you are aspiring to. To denigrate LGBTQ service members is a mistake. If you are a sharpshooter, you're as lethal regardless of what your gender identity is, regardless of who you love. So please know this to be a true statement. So you say it was a political thing. You say it undermined us, social engineering. I don't know why someone having to publicly say or not publicly say who they love is social engineering. I think having that policy in the first place was highly problematic. And as you said in your statement, do you agree anybody should be able to serve in the military if they meet the standards?
Senator, as the president has stated, I don't disagree with the overturn of Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Great, because I don't want you thinking, can't serve if you're a mom, can't serve if you're LGBTQ, and then last, can't serve if you're a leftist. The statements you said about people who have views differently than you, that we're the enemy, are you saying that 50% of the DOD, if they hold liberal views or leftist views or are Democrats, are not welcome in the military? Are you saying that?
Senator, I volunteered to deploy to Afghanistan under Democrat President Barack Obama. I also volunteered to guard the inauguration of Joe Biden, but was denied the opportunity to serve because I was identified as an extremist by my own unit for a Christian tattoo.
Thank you very much. Senator Gillibrand, you held up a document and referred to it during your questioning. Would you like that entered into the record? Okay, yeah, okay, we'll delete.
We'll submit a clean copy.
Without objection, that will be admitted at the point of your question. And I would like to enter into the record at this point a letter of support from retired Air Force Colonel Melissa Cunningham. Colonel Cunningham supports Mr. Hegseth and mentions his warrior ethos, combat effectiveness, and maintaining military training standards. So without objection, both of those will be admitted, and I now recognize Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, good morning. I'd like to thank you for your service to our nation in uniform and also your work on behalf of your fellow veterans and for your willingness to enter into this maelstrom of public service. I think the presence of so many veterans who have showed up to support you speaks volumes. I also want to recognize your family service and sacrifice. You know as well as anyone that it's not just the man that enters the arena, but it's the entire family who also works their way through this process as well. I appreciated our meeting with you and with your wife, Jennifer, this last month. I thought that we had an excellent conversation, and I appreciate your statement and your answers to the advanced policy questions, especially your desire to bring a renewed focus on warfighting and lethality back to the Pentagon. I also respect and I appreciate my friend and colleague, Senator Gillibrand, and some of her questions. And I know that she had a number of them in there. You had an opportunity to respond very briefly. Were there any other responses that you would like to make or clarifications that you would like to make before I move on to my questions?
Senator, thank you very much for the opportunity to meet and for the question. I would also acknowledge you were mentioning female engagement teams, which have shown a great deal of success on the battlefield. It would be and universally acknowledged as such. I've been in Iraqi homes where the language and gender barrier was real, and the ability to have someone there to help in that process would be a massive accelerant in mission success. I recognize that reality. I also recognize that female engagement teams assigned to a SEAL team or a Green Beret team meet different standards also, which is okay because of the duty positions involved in that job. As far as politics, Senator, it has been the joy of my life to lead men and women in military outfits. When you're in combat or in training, there's a lot of conversations that happen. And you start to realize that a lot of people you're serving with share your political ideas or they don't. You find out there's Republicans, there's Democrats, there's libertarians, there's independents, there's vegetarians, everything in between. None of that matters. It never mattered in how I led men and women, how I interacted with them, what missions we undertook. Politics has nothing to do with the battlefield, which is why President Trump has asked me to say, let's make sure all of that comes out. This is about warfighting capability, setting standards high, and making sure we give our boys, our men and women, everything they need to be successful on the battlefield. So politics can play no part in that, and I look forward to infusing that, as we always have inside our units.
I appreciate you making that very clear. And one of the areas that we want to do our best is to provide for the equipment and the technical capabilities so that no young man or woman enters into a battle as a fair fight, and that they always have the advantage. Those are the types of questions that I'd like to get into right now. And I want to start by talking about something that sometimes gets a little bit into the weeds, but I think it's critical. Mr. Hegseth, from what I've heard from 24 senior DoD officials in hearings over the last 2 years, including the Secretary of Defense, every service chief, and 8 combatant commanders, is that sharing the portion of the spectrum, and this is in the weeds, I know, but I'm going to ask it to get it on the record, the 3.1 to 3.5 gigahertz band would have extremely serious consequences and very costly consequences on our warfighting capabilities. In fact, the Department of the Navy alone has estimated that relocating their systems to a different part of the spectrum band would cost them $250 billion. That's just for the destroyers that defend our coasts with the radars that they have in them. If confirmed, what will you do to make sure that the Department of Defense can maintain its access to and the use and to be able to maneuver within the electromagnetic spectrum at home and abroad? And would you be willing to literally go to the mat with the interagency to protect warfighter requirements for the use of the spectrum?
Well, Senator, thank you for the question. And my job, in part, will be to go to the mat when necessary for things I believe are an absolute requirement for the Department of Defense and the men and women in uniform. There's no doubt about that. In this particular case, as far as spectrum, I look forward, as I've said before, getting a full class, because this issue has come up a number of times in meetings. It's critically important with how our warfighters communicate across all services. So I'm going to get a classified briefing immediately about what that would, how it would impact the spectrum if it were to allow other companies or it to be
Rest assured, China
China
would love to have our ability to use that part of the spectrum restricted. They would love that.
Absolutely right. And so I will go in with eyes only toward ensuring we have the capabilities we need and there's no disruption when I take that brief.
Thank you. In your advanced policy questions, you recognize a cooperative approach by China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea to undermine U.S. influence around the world. As you point out, aggression by any one actor would be an opportunity for others to engage the U.S. on multiple fronts along the continuum of the conflict. As we discussed in my office, neither of us wants to send our troops into a fair fight. We want to make sure that they have every advantage that the United States can give them, and that requires resources and reforms. Given the growing potential of a multi-theater conflict involving near-peer adversaries, what steps would you take to prepare the Department of Defense to simultaneously execute and sustain operations across multiple regions while maintaining readiness and deterrence globally? And I just have to make note, and I want to make it clear, we have language in this year's fiscal year 2025 National Defense Authorization Act calling for a review of the department's operational plans. And I just want to make sure that you're aware of that, and that we will have, if we have a fight with one, chances are very good that we're going to have two battles or two different battlegrounds at the same time.
Senator, which is why I believe our country's incredibly fortunate to have a new commander-in-chief in Donald Trump, who through the strategic approach he has taken with allies and against foes has prevented wars and is determined to do the same. That's our chief job, is deter and prevent wars. My job, should I be confirmed at the Secretary of Defense, is to ensure we have the right prioritization of assets and strategy, and then the tools in the toolbox necessary, the pointiest possible spear for President Trump to wield if necessary as the last resort. So President Trump at the helm, I think, will go a long way in making sure our enemies know there's a new sheriff in town.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you very much, Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having this hearing. Thank you for being here, Mr. Hegseth. And I want to join in expressing appreciation and respect for your service to our country. And thanks to all the veterans who are here today. And thank you for your service as the ranking member of the Veterans Affairs Committee. I hope we can focus on doing better for our veterans and doing better in management of the Department of Defense. There's always room for improvement. I think what we need in that position is not just better, but the best in financial management, because those decisions are life and death decisions affecting the 3.4 million Americans who serve our national security and our national defense and put their lives on the line. I want to talk about financial mismanagement at the two organizations that you headed, which are the only test of your financial management that we have before this committee, the Veterans for Freedom and Concerned Veterans for America. You took over the Veterans for Freedom in 2007. In 2008, you raised $8.7 million, but spent more than $9 million, creating a deficit. By January 2009, you told donors that the organization had less than $1,000 in the bank and debts of $434,000. By 2010, revenue at the Veterans for Freedom had dropped to about $265,000. In the next year, it had dropped further to $22,000. You don't dispute these numbers, do you?
Senator, I'm extremely proud of the work me and my fellow vets did at Vets for Freedom. A bunch of young vets with no political experience, a small group, working hard every single day. We raised donor funds. And and we have letters submitted for the record from almost everyone that worked with me every single day, including our chief operating officer, who will attest that every dollar we raised was used intentionally toward the execution of our mission, which is supporting the warfighters, exactly why we're here today, the warfighters in the Iraq surge. There was a campaign in 2008, Senator. It was Barack Obama versus John McCain.
Ask you another
we believe
question,
John McCain would be the right person to win, and so we spent
the tax returns from that organization.
I'm glad they're for the record.
I'm going to ask to be entered into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
These tax returns are yours. They have your signature. And I'm going to ask that members of the committee review them because they're the only documents. I've asked for others. I've asked for the FBI report that would presumably document, it should have documented, this kind of financial mismanagement. And these are the 990s from that organization. By the year of 2011, donors had become so dissatisfied with that mismanagement, they in effect ousted you. They merged that organization with Military Families United, and thereafter you joined a second organization as executive director.
In between, Senator, I went to Harvard
I want to
University
ask
for 2
you
years and
questions.
Afghanistan.
I want to ask you questions about Concerned Veterans for America. Again, another set of tax returns, the 990s from that organization. I ask they be made part of the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, both of those returns are now part of the record.
2011 to 2016. At the end of 2013, shortfall of $130,000. At the end of 2014, shortfall of $428,000. You had a surplus the following year, but then another deficit of $437,000. By the time you left, that organization had deep debts, including credit card transaction debts of about $75,000. That isn't the kind of fiscal management we want at the Department of Defense. We can't tolerate it at the Department of Defense. That's an organization with a budget of $850 billion, not 10 or 15 million, which was the case at those two organizations. And it has command responsibility for 3.4 million Americans. The highest number that you managed in those two organizations was maybe 50 people. Let me ask you, how many men and women now serve in the United States Army? What is Sen's strength?
Senator, I would like an opportunity to respond to
Well, I've asked you a
impugning
question.
of my leadership of a veterans organization. Concerned Veterans for America, you're on the VA committee, sir, and I appreciate your service there. The VA Accountability Act and the Mission Act were all brainchilds of Concerned Veterans for America. We used our donor money very intentionally and focused to create policy that bettered the lives of veterans.
Mr. Hegseth, I'm asking you a very simple question. How many men and women currently serve in the United States Army?
Senator, the United States Army, 450,000 on active duty, sir.
And how many in the Navy?
And the Navy is 425, sir.
Well, it's 337 this year. How many in the Marine Corps?
175,000, sir.
172,300. Those numbers dwarf any experience you had by many multiples. I don't believe that you can tell this committee or the people of America that you are qualified to lead them. I would support you as the spokesperson for the Pentagon. I don't dispute your communication skills, but I believe that we are entitled to the facts here. I've asked for more documents. I assume you'd be willing to submit to an expanded FBI background check that interviews your colleagues, accountants, ex-wives, former spouses, sexual assault survivors, and others, and enable them to come forward.
Senator, I'm not in charge of FBI background checks.
But you would submit to it and support it.
I'm not in charge of FBI background checks.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. I at this point want to submit a letter from Captain Wade Zirkle, the founder of Vets for Freedom and the person who hired Pete Hegseth to run the organization. Although the 2008 financial crisis dried up fundraising for nonprofits, Captain Zirkle says, and I quote, "Pete responded to this crisis with decisive action by reducing staff and renegotiating all debts with creditors until they were fairly resolved, an impressive feat and a testament to Pete's character." Pete departed VFF in 2010 to take on a new role with Concerned Veterans for America. Pete departed on good terms. Without objection, that will be added to the record. Senator Ernst, you are recognized for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter submitted by Mr. Mark Lucas, who is a fellow Iowan and Iowa Army National Guard member. Mr. Lucas and I served together in the Iowa Army National Guard. He succeeded Pete Hegseth as Executive Director of Concerned Veterans for America. And in his letter, Mr. Lucas says that Mr. Hegseth, quote, laid a strong foundation that postured CVA for long-term success, end quote. And that Mr. Hegseth, quote, continued to be an invaluable asset to both me as a leader and the organization, end quote. So I would ask for unanimous consent to enter this Washington Times article and the letter from Mr. Mark Lucas into the record.
Without objection.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Hegseth, and thank you very much. I appreciate your service to our nation. It's something that I know you are very proud of, and it is something that we have in common and that we share. You and I have had many productive conversations. And just for our audience, we have had very frank conversations. Is that correct, Mr. Hegseth?
Senator, that is a correct characterization.
You know that I don't keep anything hidden, pull no punches. My colleagues know that as well. So I do appreciate you sitting down and allowing me the opportunity to question you thoroughly on those issues that are of great importance to me. Just to recap those issues, 3 that are very important. One is the DOD and making sure that we have a clean audit. The second is women in combat, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And the third was maintaining high standards and making sure that we are combating sexual assault in the military. Okay, so Mr. Hegseth, I'm going to address the issue because this will tie into some of the financial concerns that have been raised here as well. And it's why, you know, I, trusting my fellow Iowan, asked for unanimous consent of his letter to go into the record. But like me, a lot of Iowans are really, really concerned and upset about the wasteful Washington spending and of course in our Pentagon. It's an issue that I have been combating for years. So there's significant room for greater efficiency and cost cutting within the department. And the DOD is the only federal agency that has never passed an audit. As the Senate DOJ caucus chair and founder, that's unacceptable to me, and it should be unacceptable to you as well. So I appreciate that you mentioned that in your opening statement. What are those steps that you will take to ensuring the Pentagon has a clean audit by the year 2028?
Senator, I appreciate your work on this topic, which you've been involved in for a long time. You mentioned Concerned Veterans for America. I just want to clarify. We have very generous donors who set a very clear budget that we stuck to every single year. So the latitude there was restricted, and we worked very hard and diligently inside it. You've also been a leader on the Pentagon audit for a very long time. I think when we met, Senator, I said 2014 was the first year. We discovered a 2013 op-ed I wrote about the need for a Pentagon audit because an audit is an issue of national security and frankly, respect to American taxpayers who give $850 billion over to the Defense Department and expect that we know where that money goes. And if that money is going somewhere that doesn't add to tooth and instead goes to fat or tail, we need to know that. Or if it's wasted, we need to know that. So I think previous secretaries of defense, with all due respect, haven't necessarily emphasized the strategic prerogative of an audit. And myself, my deputy.
All right, guys, that's it for me. We're going to end it there. If anyone's interested in still listening to it, I'll put the link right here in the chat. Look, I don't really have an opinion on this guy. There's a lot more work I have to do to understand more about him. I will say speaking ability, very strong. I mean, he's able to speak very articulate at communicating, and he's able to actually put out an idea and express it. Now, there are some questions where obviously he's a little bit more hesitant to answer. But overall, I don't know if he would be an amazing Secretary of Defense. I don't know enough about him. I do know that this is one of many confirmations that are going to happen over the next month. And there's going to be a lot of grilling by Congress of these types of people. And we're going to see over the next few months, kind of how that plays out. I do think most of them will get confirmed ultimately because they have the votes to get them confirmed. It would have to go really bad for Republicans to not vote for some of these nominations because they would be going against Trump. So a lot of this really is just like a show that they have to do as a formality, but most of these guys probably will get confirmed towards the next couple months. Markets are going red. S&P 579, Tesla holding on by a thread to 405. Hoodie, where's Hood? I think we're still holding 42 on Hood. SoFi 1442. Robinhood 42.35. That's up 7%. We were at 43. MSTR 338. Palantir just above 67 or 66, 66.27. And then as you can see right here, the S&P 500 down about 0.31%. What's really interesting is that yesterday we were red and we ended up going green at 350. And it's because of the PPI data probably leaking. That was the assumption. We got PPI this morning. Phenomenal data. Like core PPI didn't even go up month over month, which is amazing. And the market had thought it would go up by 30 bips. So that was great. That made it pretty obvious that PPI leaked. It would be really funny by 350 today if CPI leaked and then the market starts rallying again towards the end of the close. And not just the market, some individual names are still green, but the S&P in particular yesterday was all red until 350, gapped up to 582. This morning was almost at 587. Now it's back down to 579. What if at 350 the market finds out about CPI? So I guess we'll see as we get into the close. Jason will be on today. We'll have Technical Tuesday. And then after today, tomorrow is going to be the Super Bowl when it comes to beginning earnings for all the banks and CPI. So I'll be live tomorrow. We'll be streaming for a while, trying to figure out all the answers to the beginning of earnings season. But tomorrow is going to be a very, very important day for the markets. I'll be live 8:20 tomorrow, 8:20 a.m., 8:20 a.m. Word of the day is intenerate. Intenerate.
Intenerate.
To make soft or tender, soften. Soaking the stiff wool in a vinegar solution will intenerate the fibers. Words of praise can intenerate a stubborn heart. I have never heard of this word being used to mean soften. Even the word itself doesn't sound like it's a word that like is similar to soft. Intenerate sounds like like a harsh term or something. But there you go. That is the word of the day for today. All right, guys, that's it. Bayray says admit they would let you in the military even though you're gay. Congrats. Thank you, Bayray. I appreciate it. All right. Yeah, tomorrow we'll be live. Not even tomorrow. What am I saying? In like 3 hours. Dude, now that we're doing this, dude, it was weird to say. We did the stream till like 12:30 yesterday or whatever, 12:15. And then like a couple hours later, I was live again. Like at this point, it's just what, 24/7? Are we just going to go live 8 hours a day from 9 to 4:30, like the whole damn market? Because like there really wasn't any break in between. It's a couple hours and it's like, well, then you're back to it. So I don't know. Maybe eventually we just keep this thing going, bro. Then it legit will be a 9 to 5, bro. It will legit be a 9:30 to 4 p.m. job. It will legit be a 9 to 5 every day, just straight. Maybe we're going to have to do that. All right. That's it, everybody. Now I don't have to clap, or else I'm going to stay longer so the soundboard claps. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it, even though I just clapped. I'll see you guys at 3:45 tonight. Bye, everybody. Jason, Technical Tuesday. It'll be a big one. We'll go through all the stocks. We'll be live for like 3 hours going through all your tickers, and we'll keep going from there. Bye, everyone. Have a good one.